I wake up in a Fulton County hospital bed with a surgical staple line across my abdomen and an $8,000 medical bill. The billing coordinator is standing at the foot of my bed, holding a clipboard and explaining my insurance deductible. I nod, pick up my phone, and open my banking app to transfer the funds from the custodial account my grandfather left me. The screen buffers for 3 seconds. Then it loads. Available balance $0. I blink. I refresh the app. I close it and open it again. $0. I am 24 years old, recovering from an emergency appendectomy, and the $115,000 safety net I have had since I was a child is gone. Before I can even process the empty screen, the door swings open. My younger sister Brittany struts into the room. She is not carrying flowers. She is not holding a get well card. Instead, she is casually twirling a heavy leather keychain around her index finger, a keychain bearing the distinct silver crest of a Range Rover. She stops at the foot of my bed, oblivious to the billing coordinator, oblivious to the IV line in my arm. "Dad bought me a graduation present," Brittany announces, her voice dripping with the casual arrogance she has carried her entire life. "It is a Velar, custom interior. He paid in cash." I do not scream. I do not cry. My mind simply clicks into a terrifying, singular clarity. I look at the 0 on my phone, and then I look at the silver crest spinning around my sister's finger. My parents had not just mismanaged my money. They had stolen my future to buy my sister a luxury SUV. My name is Diana, and this is the story of how my parents drained the one thing my grandfather left for me alone, and how one phone call to my grandmother ended their perfect life. If you are listening to this, drop your city and local time below. I read every comment. Now let me take you back to the moment the hospital room cleared out. The billing coordinator shifts uncomfortably and says she will give me some time to sort out my payment options. She leaves. Brittany stays pacing the small room, complaining about the hospital cafeteria coffee and how the dealership forgot to install the all-weather floor mats in her new car. "Are you listening to me, Diana?" Brittany asks, tapping her manicured nails against the plastic tray table. "I wanted the beige mats, not the black ones. Dad is calling the manager today to complain." I stare at her. She is 21. She just finished a communications degree, and she genuinely believes the universe exists to cater to her minor inconveniences. Growing up in Georgia, Brittany was always the pageant queen. She was the center of gravity in our house, the golden child, who required endless funding and constant applause. I was the quiet workhorse expected to orbit her and stay out of the way. Grandpa Charles saw this dynamic clearly. That is exactly why he placed that $115,000 solely in my name, locked in a Uniform Transfers to Minors Act account. It was my escape route, and Richard, our father, was the trustee. I asked Brittany when exactly Dad bought the car. "Tuesday," she says brightly, checking her reflection in the dark screen of the television. "We just walked in, and he wrote a cashier's check right there in the showroom." The salesman was in shock. "Tuesday, 2 days ago. The exact day my bank statement shows a single catastrophic withdrawal of $115,000. I tell Brittany I need to rest. She shrugs, says she has a nail appointment anyway, and walks out, the Range Rover keys jingling all the way down the corridor. The heavy door clicks shut. I am alone with the hum of the heart monitor and a deficit I cannot pay. I do not call my parents. I know the sound of their lies too well to bother asking for an explanation. I know Richard will use his deep, authoritative voice to tell me it was a family sacrifice. I know Susan, my mother, will tell me to stop being selfish. They rely on my silence. They are counting on the fact that the obedient daughter will simply swallow the betrayal to keep the peace. I reach for my phone again. My ribs ache with every shallow breath. I bypass my parents' numbers in my contacts. I scroll down until I find the only person in the Hughes family who understands the difference between loyalty and theft. I tap the name. The phone begins to ring 3 hours away in Savannah. I press my phone against my ear. The plastic casing feels cold against my feverish cheek. The hospital room is quiet now, just the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen line taped to the wall and the distant squeak of rubber shoes on the linoleum outside my door. I look at the empty space at the foot of my bed where my sister was standing 10 minutes ago. The air still smells faintly of her expensive perfume, a sharp contrast to the rubbing alcohol and sterile sheets surrounding me. I listen to the dial tone ringing out across 300 miles of Georgia highway down to Savannah. I need to tell you about Evelyn Hughes. Most people see a 72-year-old woman in pastel cardigans who drinks iced tea on a wraparound porch. They see the pearls and the soft silver hair. They do not see the woman who took over my grandfather's commercial real estate portfolio after he died and tripled its value in a decade. My grandmother does not bake cookies. She negotiates commercial leases. She is polite, but she is ruthless. She reads balance sheets the way other people read the morning paper. The line clicks. Diana. Her voice comes through crisp and steady, lacking the usual exaggerated drawl people expect from the South. Your mother texted me about the surgery. A brief message. I assume you are calling to tell me you survived. I tell her I survived the emergency appendectomy. The surgical staples pull at my skin when I take a breath, but the physical pain is secondary right now. Then I tell her what I did not survive. I lay out the facts. I do not let my voice shake. I keep my tone flat, reciting the timeline like a police report. Tuesday morning. The banking app buffering. The screen showing a zero balance. The $115,000 withdrawal. Brittany walking into my room with the keys to a custom Range Rover Velar. Richard writing a cashier's check on the showroom floor while I was likely being prepped for surgery. For 5 seconds, the phone goes entirely dead. I pull the screen away from my face to check if the call dropped. It has not. The timer is still counting the seconds. I put it back to my ear. I can hear the faint rhythmic ticking of the antique grandfather clock in Evelyn's parlor. The silence on her end is not shock. It is not confusion. I have spent enough summers in Savannah watching her review bad contracts to know exactly what that silence means. It is the sound of a predator locking onto a scent. It is the sound of an empire builder realizing someone has breached her walls. Your father was the trustee, Evelyn finally says. Her voice is stripped of its usual warmth. It is reduced to cold steel. That was a Uniform Transfers to Minors Act account. He was the custodian. He was legally prohibited from touching the principal for anything other than your direct benefit. Buying a luxury vehicle for an adult sibling does not qualify as a direct benefit. I stare at the hospital ceiling tiles. Richard has always viewed money as a prop. He runs a boutique marketing firm in Atlanta that looks successful on paper but bleeds cash in reality. He leases cars he cannot afford and buys golf club memberships to impress men who do not care about him. Grandpa Charles knew this. My grandfather was a quiet man who valued hard work over loud displays of wealth. He saw Richard treating our family finances like a casino. That is why the trust was locked away. Richard was supposed to be a guard dog. Instead, he decided to treat my future like a personal slush fund. Think about what $115,000 means. To Richard, it was a way to maintain an image. To Brittany, it was a toy to show off to her friends. To me, it was independence. It was the physical manifestation of my grandfather's belief in my potential. He built that fund, slowly depositing portions of his real estate dividends year after year. Every dollar in that account represented hours of his labor, specifically earmarked to ensure his quiet, hardworking granddaughter would never have to depend on anyone. Richard did not just steal cash. He stole my grandfather's legacy. He erased decades of careful planning in a single afternoon at a car dealership. I lie back against the stiff hospital pillows. The pain medication is wearing off, leaving a dull, throbbing heat in my lower abdomen. The physical discomfort mirrors the sick, hollow feeling in my chest. For 24 years, I played the role of the good daughter. I kept my head down, earned my degree, and never asked for handouts. I watched Brittany receive the lavish vacations, the designer clothes, and the endless parental attention. I accepted it because I knew I had my secret safety net. I knew my grandfather had seen the disparity and corrected it. Now the net is gone. I explain my immediate reality to my grandmother. I am trapped in a hospital bed with an $8,000 insurance gap. The billing coordinator is printing out a payment plan I cannot afford. I have $64 in my personal checking account because I was waiting for my 25th birthday next month to access the trust. I was planning to use that money to start my own physical therapy clinic. I had business plans drawn up. I had commercial spaces bookmarked in the city. Now I have nothing but a surgical wound and a debt. A normal grandmother would offer empty platitudes. A normal grandmother would tell me everything happens for a reason or say she will pray for my peace of mind. She might cry. Evelyn Hughes does none of those things. She does not gasp. She does not offer to call Richard and scold him like a misbehaving child. She recognizes this is not a family misunderstanding, this is a financial crime. Through the speaker, I hear the sharp rustle of heavy paper. I hear the distinct click of a fountain pen being uncapped. She is standing up from her mahogany desk. Rest, Diana Evelyn commands softly. The instruction is not a suggestion, it is a strategic directive. Do not answer any calls from your parents. Do not reply to any texts from your sister. Do not log into social media and look at her pictures. Let them think they got away with it. Let them enjoy the car. The phone line is silent again, but it is a comfortable silence. It is the quiet before a storm makes landfall. Evelyn is already moving pieces on a chessboard my parents do not even realize they are playing on. She tells me to close my eyes. She tells me to let the nurses do their jobs. I ask her what she is going to do. The hospital monitor beeps next to my bed, a steady rhythm against the quiet determination in my grandmother's voice. I am making one phone call, she replies, her tone carrying the heavy, undeniable weight of a judge passing sentence. It is time for you to meet my lawyer. The morning light filters through the hospital blinds, casting pale stripes across the foot of my bed. The breakfast tray sits untouched on the plastic table, cold oatmeal and a sealed cup of orange juice. I hear the heavy door handle turn. I expect the phlebotomist arriving for the morning blood draw, or the billing coordinator returning to press me for a payment plan I cannot afford. I do not expect the woman who steps into the room. She wears a sharply tailored navy suit. Her heels click against the linoleum floor with absolute authority. She carries a heavy leather briefcase. She looks like she belongs in a corporate boardroom, negotiating a merger, not standing in a surgical recovery ward. She stops at the side of my bed. She does not offer a warm smile. She does not carry flowers. Diana, she says. Her voice is deep and resonant, carrying the kind of professional weight that forces people to listen. I am Victoria. Your grandmother sent me. Victoria does not possess a bedside manner. She does not ask about my appendectomy. She does not inquire about my pain levels or look at the IV line taped to the back of my hand. She pulls the plastic visitor chair closer to the bed and unlatches her briefcase. The brass locks snap open. The sound is sharp and loud in the quiet room. She pulls out a yellow legal pad and a silver pen. She asks for the routing numbers to the empty account. I recite the numbers from memory. She writes them down in tight, precise handwriting. Over the next hour, Victoria maps out the brutal reality of trust law right there on my hospital tray table. She explains the mechanics of a uniform transfers to Minors Act account. She does not use complicated legal jargon to confuse me. She breaks it down into cold facts. She draws a circle on the yellow paper. She writes my name inside it. She draws a box around the circle. She writes Richard inside the box. Your father was a custodian, Victoria explains. He had a fiduciary duty. That means he was legally bound to act solely in your best financial interest. He did not own this money. He was merely standing guard over it until your 25th birthday next month. Victoria taps the silver pen against the paper. Draining a custodial account to purchase a luxury vehicle for an adult sibling is not a gray area in Georgia law. It is not a simple parenting mistake or a family misunderstanding. It is felony embezzlement. Hearing the word felony attached to my own father sends a cold shock through my chest. The surgical wound throbs in response to my elevated heart rate. I shift against the stiff pillows. Victoria notices the flinch, but she does not stop speaking. She is not here to comfort me. She is here to arm me. She reaches into her briefcase and pulls out a thin stack of papers. Evelyn works fast, Victoria says. She authorized a preliminary asset search late last night through our private investigator. Victoria slides the top paper across the plastic tray. It is a copy of a banking record. I look at the black ink on the page. It shows a withdrawal made 3 days ago. The amount is exactly $115,000. The transaction type is listed as a cashier's check. Richard did not even try to hide the money through smaller incremental transfers over time. He walked into the bank branch in Atlanta and liquidated the entire account in a single afternoon. Victoria slides a second paper over the first. This one is a vehicle registration search from the Georgia Department of Revenue. The timestamp on the registration is from that exact same Tuesday afternoon. It lists a custom Range Rover Velar. The registered owner is Brittany Hughes. The lien holder section of the document is blank. That means the vehicle was paid for in full, with cash. The audacity sits heavy in the room. It is one thing to know my parents stole from me. It is another thing entirely to see the theft documented in state public records. To see the exact hour my grandfather's legacy was traded for a steering wheel and leather seats. Grandpa Charles built his wealth slowly. He bought small commercial lots. He managed hardware stores and strip malls. Every dollar in that account was earned through quiet grinding labor. Richard erased it in 20 minutes at a car dealership. Why would he do it like this? I ask. My voice is quiet. He had to know there was a paper trail. He had to know the bank statements would show the exact amount leaving my account and entering the dealership. Victoria leans back in her chair. She looks at me with eyes that have spent decades analyzing the worst parts of human nature in civil and criminal courts. He did it because he assumes you will never hold him accountable, Victoria says. She steeples her fingers together. He thinks because you are his daughter, you will not report him. She is right. Richard has spent my entire life grooming me to be the quiet one. He trained me to absorb the stress so Brittany could shine. I was the one who took the smaller bedroom, attended the cheaper state college, and always accepted the back seat. Richard calculated the risk. He decided his 24-year-old daughter would never have the nerve to call the police on her own father. He is counting on family loyalty to cover a federal crime, Victoria continues. She lets the sentence hang in the air. People like your father weaponize the concept of family. They use it as a shield to protect themselves from the consequences of their own greed. They demand loyalty while demonstrating none. Victoria takes the silver pen and places it on the tray table next to my untouched breakfast. She pulls a formal document from her briefcase. It is a legal retainer. It officially hires her firm to represent me. It is the first step in a process that will dismantle my parents' current lives. If you sign this, Victoria says, keeping her voice perfectly level, we begin the discovery phase. I will subpoena the original bank records from Atlanta. I will pull the dealership security footage to prove he was physically present. I will trace every single dollar from your account to that dealership floor. But you need to understand something, Diana. Once we file the paperwork, you cannot unring this bell. I look at the pen resting on the white paper. I think about my grandfather. I think about Richard treating my future like a winning lottery ticket. I think about Brittany spinning her new car keys while I sit here with $64 in my personal checking account and an $8,000 medical bill hanging over my head. My ribs ache with every shallow breath. The physical pain is sharp, but it is nothing compared to the clarity taking root in my mind. For the first time in my life, I am not trying to be the good daughter. I pick up the pen. The metal is cool against my fingers. I press the tip to the signature line. The ink flows smooth and black across the page. I hand the retainer back to Victoria. She inspects the signature, nods once, and slides the document into her briefcase. The brass lock snaps shut. The quiet counter-offensive has officially begun. Do not contact them, Victoria instructs. She stands up and smooths the front of her navy blazer. Let them reach out to you first. Document everything they say. If they text you, screenshot the messages. If they call, answer the phone but say as little as possible. Let them fill the silence with their own lies. Give them the rope they need to hang themselves. I agree. Victoria places her heavy cardstock business card on the table and walks out of the room. Her heels fade down the long hospital corridor. I am alone again, but the room feels fundamentally different. It no longer feels like a place of medical recovery. It feels like a command center. I spend the rest of the day looking at the ceiling tiles waiting. The trap is set, but it needs the prey to walk into it. The wait is not long. On the morning of my third day in the hospital, the door swings open again. It is not a nurse arriving with pain medication. It is not Victoria returning with more legal documents. It is my mother. Susan Hughes walks into the room holding a cheap paper cup of cafeteria coffee. Her hair is perfectly styled. She wears a neutral cashmere sweater and carries her designer purse clutched tight against her side like a protective shield. She looks around the small hospital room with a subtle expression of distaste. She sets the coffee on the edge of the tray table and pulls up the visitor chair. She has arrived with a rehearsed narrative, entirely unaware that the daughter she thinks she can manipulate is no longer the person lying in this bed. Susan pulls the plastic visitor chair closer to the bed. The metal legs scrape against the linoleum. She sets the paper cup on the tray table. She smooths the front of her cashmere sweater. She does not look at the surgical staples across my stomach. She does not ask what the doctor said during morning rounds. She looks at my face, searching for the familiar obedience she has spent 2 decades cultivating. "We had to make a family sacrifice," Susan begins. Her voice is calm, practiced, and perfectly pitched to sound reasonable. I do not interrupt her. I let her speak. Victoria told me to give them the rope they need, and Susan is handing it to me yard by yard. "Your sister needed a reliable vehicle." Susan continues, waving her hand dismissively, as if a custom luxury SUV is the same thing as a used sedan. Brittany just got her real estate license. She has to drive clients around Atlanta. She needs to project success. You know how image-driven that industry is. And your father has been struggling. His marketing firm is having a slow quarter. We simply did not have the liquid cash to finance a car note right now. I stare at my mother. The rationalization is breathtaking. She is sitting in a hospital room next to her youngest daughter who cannot afford to pay for an emergency surgery, and she is defending the theft of over $100,000 because her oldest daughter needs to project success to sell houses. "You are young," Diana Susan says. She tilts her head, offering a sympathetic smile that does not reach her eyes. "You have plenty of time. You can rebuild your savings." We just needed to pull together for Brittany this one time. She uses the word family like a weapon. In my parents' house, love was never unconditional. It was a transaction. It was a currency used to demand financial and emotional martyrdom. I close my eyes for a second. The smell of the bitter cafeteria coffee mixes with Susan's expensive floral perfume, dragging me backward in time. I am 10 years old again, sitting at the kitchen table in our old house trying to finish my math homework. The air in the hallway is thick with aerosol hairspray and the sharp chemical scent of spray tan. Brittany is 13, practicing her pageant walk in the living room. She wears a rhinestone tiara and a sequined dress. Richard and Susan sit on the couch, clapping enthusiastically every time she nails her pivot. I am invisible. I am the background prop. I am the quiet workhorse who gets good grades, causes no trouble, and requires no applause. Grandpa Charles used to visit on Sunday afternoons. He would sit in the corner armchair drinking black coffee, watching the circus. He did not clap. He possessed a quiet, observant intelligence. He saw the imbalance. He watched Richard write large checks for entry fees, vocal coaches, and custom gowns, while my requests for a simple summer camp were met with lectures about the family budget. Grandpa Charles knew my parents would eventually consume everything they touched to feed Brittany's ego and Richard's pride. That is exactly why he walked into a bank in Savannah, opened a restricted account, and placed the money solely in my name. He built a fortress around my future. And Susan is sitting here telling me it was my duty to let them burn the fortress down. I open my eyes. Susan is still talking, outlining Brittany's bright future in the Atlanta real estate market. She acts as though the issue is resolved. She believes her logic is flawless. She believes she has successfully managed my reaction. She reaches across the narrow space between us. She places her manicured hand over my leg, patting the thin hospital blanket. It is the ultimate gesture of condescending comfort. "We knew you would understand, Diana," she says softly. "You have always been the practical one." I nod. I look down at my lap. I mimic the quiet compliance they have expected from me for 24 years. I let my shoulders slump. I let my expression soften into defeat. Susan sighs, visibly relieved. She removes her hand. She picks up her coffee cup and checks the gold watch on her left wrist. She mentions she has a tennis lesson at noon and needs to beat the midday traffic on the interstate. She stands up, tells me to rest, and promises to call me tomorrow. She walks out of the room, her heels clicking against the floor, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume. The heavy door swings shut. The latch clicks into place. I wait 3 seconds. Then I reach under the edge of my blanket. I pull out my phone. The screen is dark, but the voice memo application is running in the background. A steady red bar pulses across the top of the screen. I press the stop button. The audio file saves instantly to my cloud drive. I press play. Susan's voice fills the quiet hospital room sharp and clear. "We had to make a family sacrifice. Your sister needed a reliable vehicle. We simply did not have the liquid cash." In the state of Georgia, wiretapping and recording laws operate under single-party consent. That means as long as one person in the conversation is aware the recording is taking place, it is entirely legal. I do not need a warrant. I do not need my mother's permission. I just need her to admit the truth out loud. And she just did. I forward the audio file to Victoria. The civil dispute over a banking error has just gained its first piece of hard, undeniable evidence. Susan confessed to the motive. She admitted the funds were repurposed for Brittany. But I know Victoria will need more to trigger a criminal indictment. An audio recording of my mother explaining why they took the money is powerful, but it does not prove how Richard physically bypassed the bank's strict security protocols to drain a custodial account. We need the paper trail. We need to know the exact mechanism of the theft. I set the phone on my tray table. My surgical wound throbs, a dull reminder of my physical vulnerability, but my mind is racing forward. Victoria warned me that Richard is arrogant. She said he assumes he is invincible because he is the patriarch, but arrogance always leaves a mess. Richard and Susan might think they committed the perfect quiet crime, but they are forgetting one crucial variable. They bought a luxury vehicle for a 21-year-old girl who thrives on public validation. Brittany cannot keep a secret. She does not know how to be quiet. She spent her entire childhood performing for an audience, and now she has the ultimate prop. She will not just drive that Range Rover in secret. She will display it. She will demand the world look at her, and in doing so, she will hand Victoria the exact timeline and location data we need to tear Richard's defense apart. I pick up my phone again. I open my social media applications. I have not checked my feeds since before my surgery. I type Brittany's name into the search bar. The page loads. The screen fills with bright, high-definition images. The trap is no longer just waiting. The prey is already dancing inside it. I am discharged from the Fulton County Recovery Ward on a Thursday afternoon. I do not return to my small apartment in Atlanta. I pack a single canvas duffel bag with the help of a discharging nurse and hire a private medical transport to drive me 3 hours south. The highway rolls by in a blur of green pine trees and gray asphalt. I watch the landscape shift as we enter the low country. I am heading to Savannah. I am heading to the only place my parents cannot reach me. Evelyn lives in a historic Victorian house near Forsyth Park. The air here is different from the city. It is thick, heavy with humidity, and smells of Spanish moss and old brick. It feels like an impenetrable fortress. When the transport van pulls into the circular driveway, my grandmother meets me at the front door. She wears a crisp white blouse and tailored slacks. She does not fuss over me. She does not treat me like a fragile victim. She pays the driver, takes my canvas bag, and points down the wide hardwood hallway toward the guest room. She tells me a pitcher of sweet tea is in the refrigerator and that I need to rest my body so my mind can work. She treats the house not as a place of healing, but as a war room. I take a warm shower, careful to keep the water away from the surgical tape across my abdomen. I change into loose cotton clothes. I walk out to the back porch and sit in a woven wicker chair. The evening heat presses against my skin, offering a strange comfort. The garden is quiet, filled with the hum of cicadas and the faint rustle of palmetto leaves. I pick up my phone from the glass table. The screen glows in the dim light. Victoria instructed me to gather rope. It is time to see how much my family has provided. I open my social media applications and navigate straight to my sister's page. Brittany has never understood the concept of discretion. Her entire existence is a carefully curated exhibit of unearned luxury. She does not hide her consumption. She broadcasts it. The first post on her feed is a high-definition video uploaded mere hours after my surgery began. It starts with a tight visual of a silver key fob. The camera pans up slowly, revealing the sleek dark gray exterior of the Range Rover Velar. Brittany stands in the center of the frame. She wears a white designer sundress. Her hair is perfectly curled. She holds a bottle of expensive champagne. She smiles at the camera, pops the cork, and pours the foaming wine directly over the pristine hood of the $115,000 vehicle. The dealership logo is clearly visible on the large glass windows behind her. The location tag at the top of the post pinpoints the exact luxury auto broker in Buckhead. Below the video, her caption sits like a slap across the face. Hard work pays off. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for believing in my dreams. I read the words 3 times. Hard work. Brittany spent 4 years in a generic communications program, taking classes on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons so she could attend pool parties on the weekends. She has never worked a double shift. She has never worried about an electricity bill. She fundamentally views wealth as a naturally occurring resource generated by our parents to smooth out her life. She is entirely blind to the legal firestorm building directly beneath her expensive leather seats. I do not leave a comment. I do not react with an angry face. I press the side buttons on my phone. The screen flashes white. Screenshot. I capture the video frame. I capture the location tag. I capture the timestamp proving she was celebrating while I was under general anesthesia. She did not stop with one video. I tapped the circular icon around her profile picture to view her temporary stories. The arrogance accelerates. She posts a photograph of her hands on the steering wheel, showing off a fresh manicure against the custom dashboard. The caption reads, "Best graduation present ever." Screenshot. She posts a video of the interior highlighting the panoramic sunroof and the premium sound system. Every stitch of that leather, every digital screen was paid for by Grandpa Charles. It was paid for by decades of his quiet, grinding labor in hardware stores and commercial lots. And Brittany is treating his legacy like a disposable prop for her followers. Screenshot. I scroll down to the comment section of the main video. It is filled with heart emojis and endless congratulations from her sorority sisters and new real estate colleagues. And right at the top, pinned for maximum visibility, is a comment from our father. "So proud of you, kiddo," Richard wrote. "You earned this. Enjoy the ride." Another flash of white. Screenshot. Richard has just publicly confirmed his involvement. He placed himself at the scene of the transaction and took credit for the purchase. He cemented his own complicity for the world to see. Richard has always managed his public image with manic precision. He sponsors local golf tournaments. He wears expensive suits to casual neighborhood barbecues. He built his boutique marketing firm on the illusion of limitless success. But illusion requires constant cash flow. When his firm hit a slow quarter earlier this year, the facade started to crack. He could not afford to tell Brittany she could not have the car. Refusing her would mean admitting failure. It would mean shattering his carefully constructed image. He saw my custodial account as an idle asset while his social reputation was an active liability. He chose to steal his youngest daughter's future to buy a prop for his oldest daughter's feed. He thought he was solving a temporary cash flow problem. He did not realize he was documenting a felony. I select the 8 pristine screenshots from my photo gallery and email them directly to Victoria. The subject line is simple. Dealership location and timeline verified. The sun dips below the oak trees surrounding Evelyn's yard. The porch shadows grow long and dark. My phone vibrates against the glass table, rattling the ice in my tea glass. It is Victoria. I answer on the first ring. Answer on. I received the images, Victoria says. Her tone is brisk, cutting straight through the humid Georgia air. Your sister just saved my private investigator 3 days of legwork. We have the exact dealership. We have the timestamp. But I did not call to talk about social media. I called because I received the preliminary file back from the bank fraud division in Atlanta. I ask her what the bank records show. I expect her to tell me about the wire transfer details. I expect her to confirm Richard used his legal status as a custodian to simply empty the funds. They did not just transfer the money, Victoria notes. Her voice echoes with a sharp professional satisfaction. Your grandfather was a very cautious man, Diana. He set up the uniform transfers to Miners Act account with a specific failsafe. The bank required a signed release form to authorize any single withdrawal over $50,000 before your 25th birthday. It was an added layer of security to prevent premature liquidation. My pulse quickens. The surgical staples pull tight against my skin. I did not sign any release form. I was in an emergency room filling out admission paperwork on Tuesday morning. Exactly, Victoria says, anticipating my thought. The bank has a paper release form on file. It is dated Tuesday at 10 in the morning. It authorizes the full transfer of the entire balance. And it bears your signature, or rather someone's attempt at your signature. I stare out at the dark garden. The cicadas seem to grow louder. Your father had to forge your name on a federal banking document to bypass the age restriction. Victoria continues, letting the weight of the words settle over the line. We are no longer just dealing with a civil dispute over fiduciary mismanagement. We now have identity theft. We have wire fraud. The trap has expanded. It is no longer just a net, it is a steel cage. But Victoria warns me that knowing he forged the document and proving he forged it in a court of law are two different things. A clever defense attorney could argue the signature is real, dragging the process out for years through handwriting experts and endless litigation. We need a shortcut. We need him to confess. If we want the district attorney to act swiftly, Victoria says, her voice lowering into a tactical whisper, we need Richard to admit he bypassed the bank's security. We need him to say it out loud. I look at the voice memo application on my phone screen. I think about Georgia's single-party consent laws. I tell Victoria I know exactly how to make him talk. I sit on the back porch of my grandmother's house in Savannah and look at my phone. The screen glows in the humid darkness. Victoria needs an admission of guilt. She needs Richard to say out loud that he bypassed the strict security protocols of my custodial account. Proving a financial crime through paper trails alone can take months of grueling litigation, especially when the thief is a family member. Defense attorneys thrive in the gray areas of family dynamics. They argue implied consent. They claim verbal authorization. We need to eliminate the gray area. We need a confession. In the state of Georgia, the law provides a very specific tool for this exact scenario. It is called single-party consent. The statute dictates that as long as one person involved in a conversation knows it is being recorded, the recording is legally binding and admissible in a court of law. I do not need to read my father his rights. I do not need to ask for his permission. I just need to press a button and let his own arrogance do the heavy lifting. I open the voice recording application on my phone. A large red circle sits in the center of the screen waiting for my command. Before I press it, I have to prepare my voice. I cannot sound like the woman sitting in Evelyn Hughes' fortress backed by a ruthless corporate attorney. I have to sound like the frightened 24-year-old girl Richard expects me to be. I have to sound small, panicked, and entirely broken by the medical debt hanging over my head. Richard views every conversation as a negotiation he must dominate. If he senses strength, he will put his guard up. He will speak in careful, measured sentences. But if he senses weakness, his ego will take over. He will want to gloat. He will want to put me in my place. I take a shallow breath. The surgical staples pull at my skin, sending a sharp wave of genuine pain through my stomach. I use that pain. I let the sting tighten my throat. I let my voice drop an octave, capturing the raw exhaustion of the past 3 days. I press the red circle. The timer begins counting up. 0 minutes and 1 second. I dial his number. The phone rings 3 times. The sound echoes in the quiet savanna air. On the fourth ring, the line connects. I do not hear the quiet interior of an office. I hear the loud overlapping chatter of a busy restaurant. I hear the distinct clink of heavy glassware and the low hum of jazz music playing in the background. Richard is out to dinner. He is celebrating. He is drinking expensive scotch while his youngest daughter is staring down an $8,000 medical bill. "Diana," he answers. His tone is clipped, laced with immediate annoyance. "I told your mother I was busy tonight. What is so urgent?" I do not ask how his dinner is going. I launch straight into the trap. "Dad, I need your help," I say. My voice trembles. The hospital billing department just called my room before I was discharged. They are refusing to set up a standard payment plan because of my income bracket. They are threatening to send the entire $8,000 balance to collections by the end of the month. I do not know what to do. I hear a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. It is the classic Richard Hughes exhale. It is the sound of an aggrieved patriarch burdened by the trivial problems of his children. He covers the receiver with his hand for a moment. I can hear him ordering another drink from a waiter. Then he comes back to me. "Diana, you are overreacting," he says, adopting his usual condescending tone. "Hospitals always use scare tactics to collect debt. You just need to ignore their calls for a few weeks and negotiate a lower settlement later. It is simple business. Do not call me in a panic while I am entertaining clients." I press harder. I inject a note of desperate pleading into my voice. "But I had the money. Dad," I say, letting my breathing turn ragged. "The money Grandpa Charles left me. I checked the app and the balance is 0. Susan came to the hospital and told me you bought Brittany a car. She said you took all of it. How am I supposed to pay my medical bills when my safety net is gone?" Another sigh, louder this time. He is growing irritated. The trap is working. He wants to end the conversation, and to do that, he feels the need to assert his absolute authority over the situation. "Diana, I already explained this to your mother, and she explained it to you. The money is gone. I signed the release, I took the funds, and I bought your sister the vehicle. Your sister just secured her real estate license. She needed a reliable professional car more than you need to sit on a pile of idle cash. You are young. You can work and pay off a small hospital bill. Brittany needed an investment in her career. He just admitted to taking the funds. He admitted the motive. But I need the mechanical detail. I need the felony wire fraud admission. I need him to confess to bypassing the bank age restriction. I force my voice to crack. I make myself sound bewildered and betrayed. "But the bank teller told me the account was locked," I say, stammering slightly. "They told me no one could withdraw that much money without my specific written authorization. They said there was a paper release form filed on Tuesday morning with my signature on it. Did you forge my name on the early release document?" The background noise of the restaurant seems to fade away. The silence stretches for 2 beats. A smart man would hang up. A cautious man would deny the accusation and demand to speak to a lawyer. But Richard is neither smart nor cautious when his authority is questioned by someone he considers beneath him. The accusation insults his pride. "I am your father," Richard snaps. His voice turns hard, cutting through the phone speaker like a knife. "I do not need your permission to manage family assets. My name was on that account as the custodian, and I did what was necessary for the benefit of this family. I signed the paperwork to get the deal done because you were unavailable and your sister needed the car that day. Stop being so selfish, Diana. The world does not revolve around you." The line goes dead. He hangs up. I sit in the wicker chair on the dark porch. The cicadas hum in the garden. I pull the phone away from my ear. The recording timer reads 2 minutes and 14 seconds. I press the stop button. The file saves automatically to my secure cloud drive. I do not feel a rush of victory. I do not feel joy. I just feel a deep, stoic exhaustion. I have spent my entire life trying to earn the respect of a man who just told me that stealing my inheritance and forging my signature was a routine family management decision. He believes his title as a father grants him immunity from federal law. I open my email application. I attach the pristine, high-quality audio file to a new message. I address it to Victoria. I do not write a long explanation in the body of the email. I just type 2 sentences. He admitted to signing the early release document to purchase the car. The confession is clear. I hit send. A small swoosh sound confirms the message has flown out of Savannah back up the highway to Atlanta. The civil dispute is officially dead. There will be no mediation. There will be no quiet family settlement or forced apologies around a Thanksgiving table. By pressing send, I have irrevocably mutated this conflict into a slam-dunk criminal case. 10 minutes later, my screen lights up with a reply from Victoria. The message is brief, matching her usual clinical efficiency. Audio received and verified. The verbal confession is flawless. We have wire fraud. But verbal confessions can be contested if the defense claims he misspoke in anger. I need to lock the cage. I am filing the subpoena tomorrow morning to force the bank to surrender the original physical document. We need to see exactly what he wrote on that signature line. I lock my phone and set it on the glass table. The verbal trap worked perfectly. But as Victoria noted, the legal machinery requires physical proof. Richard thinks his arrogant declaration on the phone was the end of the argument. He has no idea that his forged signature is currently sitting in a bank vault, waiting to be pulled into the harsh light of a forensic investigation. The paper trail is about to expose a level of criminal incompetence that will leave him with no defense at all. Tuesday morning arrives with a heavy coastal rain. The drops hit the tin roof of Evelyn's Savannah home in a steady, drumming rhythm. I sit at the long mahogany dining table in the formal dining room. The polished wood reflects the gray light spilling through the tall windows. My surgical wound is healing, but a dull ache remains beneath my cotton shirt, a physical reminder of the vulnerability that started this entire cascade of events. The front doorbell chimes. I hear Evelyn walk down the hallway. The heavy oak door opens, letting in the damp scent of the rain. Victoria steps inside. She shakes her dark umbrella on the welcome mat and walks straight into the dining room. She wears a tailored charcoal suit today. Her leather briefcase swings by her side. She does not offer polite morning greetings. She does not ask about my recovery. She sets the briefcase on the mahogany table. The brass locks snap open with a sharp metallic click that echoes in the quiet room. The conflict has officially shifted. We are leaving the messy emotional realm of family betrayal. We are entering the cold, undeniable territory of forensic evidence. I subpoenaed the original withdrawal documents from the bank branch in Atlanta, Victoria says. Her voice is brisk and efficient. The fraud division complied early this morning. They sent the secure file directly to my office. She pulls a single clear plastic folder from the briefcase. Inside the folder is a stark white piece of paper. It is a high-resolution photocopy of the early release authorization form. Victoria slides it across the smooth wood. The paper comes to rest directly in front of me. Take a look at the bottom line, Victoria instructs. I lean forward. The document is filled with standard banking clauses and liability waivers. My eyes bypass the legal text and land on the signature line. The black ink spells out the name Diana Hughes, but the name does not belong to me. My real signature is small and precise. It is tight, legible, and stays strictly within the printed boundaries. The signature staring back at me is large and sprawling. The pen pressed deep into the paper, creating thick, dark strokes. The loops of the letters lean sharply to the right. The capital D dominates the space, and the final S trails off in a hasty, dismissive flick. I know this handwriting. I have seen it my entire life. It is the exact script written on the bottom of my childhood report cards. It is the ink on every birthday card and every permission slip I ever handed to a teacher. It is Richard's distinct, overbearing handwriting. My father runs a boutique marketing firm. He signs vendor contracts and lease agreements to command respect. He views every stroke of a pen as a physical extension of his power. He signs his name like a corporate executive closing a hostile takeover. He signed my name the exact same way. He did not even bother to practice a feminine loop. He did not trace my actual signature from an old document. He just took the bank pen and wrote my name using his own towering ego. Evelyn steps up behind my chair. She places one hand on the back of the mahogany seat. She leans forward, her silver hair catching the gray light from the window. She stares at the black ink on the white page. Her expression shifts into a mask of pure disgust. He did not even try to mimic your signature, Evelyn observes. Her voice is a low, quiet murmur of ultimate judgment. He did not think he needed to, Victoria replies. She pulls up a chair and sits across from us. Your son is accustomed to operating without oversight. He walked into that bank branch assuming his title as a father granted him blanket authority over the assets. He was entirely convinced of his own invincibility. Victoria folds her hands on top of the briefcase. She looks directly into my eyes. The forensic evidence is undeniable, Diana. When we combine this physical document with the audio recording of him admitting he bypassed the security protocols, we eliminate every possible defense. There is no gray area left. I ask her to explain the exact legal ramifications. I need to hear the actual words. I need to understand the precise mechanics of the trap we have built. Victoria does not sugarcoat the reality. She lists the charges one by one, letting each term land with heavy, definitive weight. First, we have identity theft, she begins. He assumed your legal identity to bypass a federal financial safeguard. Second, we have felony forgery. He knowingly falsified a signature on a binding financial instrument to secure a pecuniary gain. Third, and most severely, we have the embezzlement of a minor's trust. The Uniform Transfers to Minors Act is protected under strict state guidelines. Liquidating a protected account for personal use or the use of an unauthorized third party is a severe financial crime. I stare at the sprawling letters on the page, the letters that spell my name. If the district attorney chooses to pursue the maximum penalty, Victoria continues, her tone never wavering. Richard faces between 5 and 15 years in a Georgia state penitentiary. He will also be required to pay full restitution, and he will be permanently stripped of his ability to act as a financial fiduciary in this state. His marketing firm will collapse. His professional licenses will be revoked. The sheer weight of the impending consequences finally settles over the dining room. The air feels thin. The rain continues to beat against the tin roof, but it sounds far away. This is no longer a family squabble over a car. This is not a disagreement about financial priorities. This is the systematic dismantling of a father's life. I picture Richard in his tailored suits. I picture him standing on the green of his expensive country club, laughing with other executives. I try to reconcile that polished image with the concrete walls of a state prison. The contrast is jarring. It feels impossible. A sudden wave of nausea rises in my throat. My hands turn cold. I grip the edge of the mahogany table, my knuckles turning white. The biological instinct to protect my parent flares up. He is the man who taught me how to ride a bicycle. He is the man who paid for my childhood home. Sending him to prison feels like a violation of the natural order. But then I look at the signature again, the sharp, dismissive slant of the letters. The biological instinct fades, replaced instantly by a hardened, cold resolve. Richard did not think about the natural order when he stood in that bank. He did not think about protecting his child. He stole my grandfather's legacy to buy Brittany a status symbol. He left me trapped in a hospital bed with an $8,000 bill. He told me to stop being selfish while he drained my future. He forged my name because he believed I was too weak to stop him. I realize I have nothing left to lose. He already took my safety net. He already proved my role in the family was nothing more than a disposable resource. I am not ruining his life. He ruined it the second he pressed the pen to the paper. I release my grip on the table. My hands are steady. The nausea is gone. What is the next step, I ask? Victoria smiles. It is a thin, predatory smile. She takes the photocopy and slides it back into the clear plastic folder. The bank is currently unaware that their teller accepted a forged document, Victoria says. Banks do not like to be unwitting accomplices to federal wire fraud. I am going to submit this forensic discrepancy directly to their fraud division this afternoon. I am going to formally notify them that the $115,000 transfer was executed via identity theft. Evelyn stands up straight. She looks at the lawyer. And how will the institution respond to that notification? They will panic. Victoria answers calmly. They will immediately initiate a hard freeze on every single account associated with Richard Hughes to mitigate their own liability. His checking accounts, his business lines of credit, his mortgage escrows, everything will stop. He is about to discover that stealing money is easy, but surviving the consequences is very expensive. Victoria snaps her briefcase shut. The trap is no longer just waiting. The mechanism has been triggered. The first domino is about to fall, and Richard is standing directly in its path. On a random Thursday morning, the first domino falls. The Savannah sunroom is bright. The air is still. I sit in a high-backed wicker chair. I trace the rim of a ceramic teacup with my index finger. The tea is chamomile steeped with honey. Evelyn sits across from me reading a hardcover biography. She turns a page. The sound is sharp and crisp in the quiet room. We are waiting. Victoria filed the paperwork with the Bank Fraud Division 24 hours ago. The legal machinery operates in silence until the exact moment it strikes. 250 miles north in the heart of Atlanta, the silence shatters. Richard is sitting in a leather booth at a high-end steakhouse in Buckhead. I know his schedule. He always hosts prospective marketing clients on Thursday afternoons. He wears a tailored suit. He orders expensive wine. He relies on the illusion of limitless capital to secure new contracts. The lunch concludes. The waiter brings the leather checkbook to the table. Richard does not even look at the total. He pulls his heavy platinum corporate card from his wallet and sets it on the silver tray. He expects the transaction to be invisible, a smooth conclusion to a successful pitch. 5 minutes pass. The waiter returns. The waiter does not offer a polite smile. He leans down and speaks in a low, discreet tone. He informs Richard that the corporate card has been declined. Richard laughs. He waves his hand, acting as though it is a simple clerical error. He reaches into his wallet and extracts his personal debit card. He hands it over with an apology to his guests. Another 5 minutes pass. The waiter returns again. The personal card has also been declined. The illusion begins to fracture. The prospective clients exchange a quick, uncomfortable glance. The silence at the table turns heavy. Richard feels a prickle of heat on the back of his neck. He excuses himself, leaving his guests at the table, and steps out onto the busy sidewalk of Peachtree Street. The humid city air hits him. He pulls out his phone and opens his banking application. He expects to see a security alert, a temporary hold for unusual activity. He types in his password. The screen loads. A stark red banner stretches across the top of the display. His personal checking account is frozen. His corporate expense account is frozen. His joint savings account with Susan is locked. While he is staring at the red banner, a new email notification drops down from the top of his screen. It is an automated message from his mortgage lender. His auto draft payment for the month has bounced due to insufficient available funds. The bank has initiated a hard legal freeze on every single asset bearing his name. Panic is a physical sensation. It starts in the chest and radiates outward, turning the hands numb and the breath shallow. Richard dials the customer service number on the back of his platinum card. He paces the sidewalk, ignoring the pedestrians flowing around him. He expects to raise his voice at a junior representative. He expects his deep, authoritative tone to resolve the issue within minutes. A representative answers, but they do not apologize. They ask for his social security number. They place him on a brief hold. When the line reconnects, a different person speaks. It is a manager from the Legal Compliance Division. The manager informs Richard that a court order has been executed. The manager uses the phrase felony fraud investigation. The manager states that the institution cannot disperse any funds, nor can they discuss the matter further. The line goes dead. Richard is standing on a busy street corner with no access to his money. He cannot pay for the steak lunch sitting on his table. He cannot pay his mortgage. He cannot access the funds to run his business. He has spent decades building a life based entirely on appearances, and Victoria just turned the lights out. At 2:15 in the afternoon, my phone vibrates against the glass table in the sunroom. I look down. The screen displays his name. I do not flinch. My heart rate does not elevate. The surgical staples across my abdomen do not throb with sudden anxiety. The biological fear that used to dictate my reactions to his temper is gone. I let the phone vibrate 3 times. I want him to wait. I want him to feel the exact length of those seconds. I pick up the phone and press accept. I bring the speaker to my ear. I do not say hello. I let the silence hang. What did you do? His voice is unrecognizable. It is not the booming, confident tone of a patriarch holding court in his living room. It is high, thin, and breathless. It is the sound of a man who just realized the ground beneath his feet is missing. I hear the loud blast of a car horn and the rumble of a diesel engine behind him. He is still standing in the street. The bank is telling me there is a fraud investigation pending on my accounts. He says the words spilling out in a frantic rush. They locked everything down. My business cards are frozen. My mortgage just bounced. Did you call them? Did you say something to the fraud department? I sit back in the wicker chair. I pick up the ceramic teacup. The chamomile tea is warm. I trace the delicate gold rim with my index finger. I look out through the glass panes at the Spanish moss hanging from the oak trees in the garden. Everything in my current environment is peaceful, steady, and secure. I take a slow breath. My voice is calm. It does not shake. I simply asked the bank where my grandfather's money went, Dad. I guess they decided to look into it. The response is immediate. The thin veneer of panic shatters, giving way to a raw, unhinged temper. Richard begins to scream. The volume forces me to hold the phone an inch away from my ear. He curses. He calls me ungrateful. He says I have no idea how the real world works. He insists that the money was a family asset and that I had no right to question his authority. You call them right now, he orders, his voice cracking with desperation. You call the fraud department and tell them it was a misunderstanding. You tell them I had your permission to move those funds. If you do not fix this today, Diana, you are finished. I will disown you. You will not get another cent from me for the rest of your life. I will cut you out of this family forever. He pauses, panting for breath, waiting for the threat to land. He expects me to apologize. He expects the fear of banishment to force me into compliance. He does not realize he is threatening to take away a relationship I have already buried. He is threatening to cut me off from a family that left me in a hospital bed with $64 to my name while they bought a luxury car. He thinks his approval is a prize I am still trying to win. I do not interrupt him. I let the silence stretch across the line, highlighting the hollow nature of his threats. You are ruining this family, he yells. The words echo slightly, bouncing off the brick buildings of whatever street corner he is standing on. I set the teacup down on its matching saucer. The porcelain makes a soft, definitive click. No, I reply. My voice is steady and ice cold. I am just reading the receipt. I press the red button on the screen and end the call. I set the phone face down on the table. Evelyn turns the page of her biography. She does not look up, but a small, satisfied smile touches the corners of her mouth. The first phase of the counter-offensive is complete. Richard has been stripped of his financial power. He is cornered, embarrassed, and running out of time. But a cornered man is dangerous. He knows he cannot bully me into submission anymore. He knows his yelling has lost its effectiveness. His paternal authority has been exposed as a fraud. He will need to try a different tactic. He will need to deploy a softer weapon. He needs someone who knows how to manipulate my guilt, someone who can cry on demand and twist the narrative until the victim looks like the villain. Richard will send Susan. My mother is going to have to step out of the shadows and make the long drive to Savannah to try and fix a crime she helped commit. 2 days after the bank accounts freeze, desperation forces the enabler out of the shadows. It is a Saturday morning. The Savannah heat is already pressing against the windows, thick and unyielding. I am sitting in the kitchen drinking a glass of water when the heavy brass knocker on the front door sounds twice. Evelyn answers it. I hear the low murmur of voices in the entryway. A moment later, my grandmother steps into the kitchen. Her posture is rigid. Your mother is on the porch, Evelyn says. She drove down from Atlanta. She is asking for 10 minutes of your time. I set my glass on the granite counter. Susan Hughes has never driven 3 hours out of her way to comfort me. She did not drive to the hospital when I was admitted for emergency surgery. She only made the trip when the consequences of her actions finally breached the walls of her own home. I walk down the long hardwood hallway. I step out onto the shaded wraparound porch. Susan is standing near the top step. She looks haggard. The coastal humidity has flattened her perfectly styled blonde hair, leaving it limp against her shoulders. She wears a beige linen dress that looks wrinkled from the long drive. She holds her designer leather purse clutched tight against her chest, holding it like a physical shield against the reality of the situation. She sees me and immediately steps forward. Her eyes are red and swollen. "Diana?" she says, her voice trembling. "Please, just give me 10 minutes. We have to talk." Evelyn steps out onto the porch behind me. "We will talk in the parlor," my grandmother dictates. Susan does not argue. She follows us inside. Evelyn's formal parlor is an intimidating room. It features dark velvet armchairs, antique Persian rugs, and portraits of stern ancestors staring down from the walls. It is a room designed to make guests feel small. Evelyn takes a seat in the corner near the window. She does not offer tea. She does not offer a polite smile. She crosses her legs and watches. She is the silent judge presiding over the room. I sit in a high-backed chair across from the velvet sofa. Susan sits on the edge of the cushions. She keeps her purse on her lap. She looks around the room, clearly unnerved by Evelyn's silent scrutiny, before fixing her gaze on me. She begins her performance. Susan breaks down into tears. It is a practiced display. She dabs the corners of her eyes with a tissue she pulls from her bag. She takes shuddering breaths. Growing up, Susan was the architect of our family's emotional reality. If Richard was the enforcer, Susan was the diplomat who normalized his cruelty. She taught me that accommodating Brittany was synonymous with being a good person. She is here to play her favorite role. She is the peacemaker asking the victim to apologize for bleeding. "You have to stop this," Diana Susan pleads, leaning forward. "Your father is terrified. His business accounts are locked. He cannot pay his vendors. The bank is treating him like a common criminal." "He is a criminal," I state. My voice is level. I do not raise it. I simply offer the fact. Susan gasps. She presses the tissue to her mouth, looking at me as if I just slapped her. "He is your father," she cries. Her tone shifts from pleading to accusatory. "He made a mistake, yes. He was under a lot of pressure. But he could go to jail, Diana. He could actually go to prison. Is that what you want? Do you want to put your own father in a cage over a car?" She tries to flip the board. She tries to make me the aggressor. She wants me to feel responsible for the federal charges Richard brought upon himself. But the guilt fails to take root. I look at her red eyes and trembling hands, and I feel nothing but a cold, clear emptiness. I remember the pain of waking up in the hospital. I remember the panic of seeing a zero balance on my phone. I do not blink. I do not offer comfort. I let the silence stretch across the parlor. Susan watches my face. She waits for the habitual apology. She waits for me to fold. When I remain perfectly still, a flicker of panic crosses her features. The old script is broken. The guilt trip is useless. She realizes she has to pivot. She opens the brass clasp of her designer purse. Her hands shake slightly as she reaches inside. She pulls out a navy blue checkbook. It is a personal account, likely a separate emergency fund she kept hidden from Richard's primary banking structure. "We will pay you back," she whispers. She drops the accusatory tone, adopting a conspiratorial, desperate pitch. "Every single cent. I swear it. You just need to call your lawyer. Call Victoria and tell her to withdraw the fraud complaint. Tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you gave him verbal permission and just forgot. She is sitting in my grandmother's house asking me to commit perjury. She's asking me to lie to federal investigators to protect a man who forged my signature." I look at the navy blue checkbook in her hands. "How do you plan to pay me back?" I ask quietly. "Richard has no access to capital. You just spent 6 figures on a luxury vehicle that depreciated the second Brittany drove it off the lot." Susan opens the checkbook to a blank page. She clicks a pen. "I have a little money set aside," she says quickly. "I can write you a check right now to show good faith. And then we can set up a schedule. We can give you $200 a month, regular payments, every single month without fail. Please, Diana, just call off the lawyers. I sit back against the velvet upholstery. I do not look at her. I look at the dark wood of the coffee table between us. I calculate the math in my head. $115,000. The stolen principal. I divide that number by 200. That equals 575 months. I divide 575 by 12, 47.9 years. I look back up at my mother. At $200 a month, it would take almost 48 years to repay the principal amount. I would be 72 years old by the time the debt was settled. That calculation completely ignores the cost of interest. It ignores inflation. It ignores the $8,000 medical bill currently gaining late fees in my name. And it entirely ignores the emotional devastation of the betrayal. She is offering me a payment plan that spans half a century. It treats my stolen inheritance like a 0% interest loan they forced me to underwrite. It is the ultimate insult. It is a payment plan for a stolen life. I look her dead in the eye. You spent my inheritance in one afternoon, I say flatly. Susan freezes. The pen stops hovering over the checkbook. You let him drain my future. I continue, my voice hard and hollow. You watched him forge my signature. You watched Brittany drive away in a $100,000 car, and now you expect me to wait 48 years for you to pay me back. Susan opens her mouth. She tries to formulate another excuse. Diana, please try to understand our financial position right now. I am not financing your crime, I say. I stand up from the chair. Leave. Susan looks at me stunned. She turns her head, seeking support from the corner of the room. She looks at Evelyn. Evelyn stares back with eyes like chipped ice. You heard my granddaughter, Evelyn says softly. Show yourself out, Susan. Susan snaps the checkbook shut. She shoves it back into her purse. She stands up. Her hands are shaking, but not from sorrow. It is the tremor of a woman who has completely lost control of her narrative. She realizes the daughter they spent 24 years training to be weak has become an impenetrable fortress. She turns on her heel and walks quickly out of the parlor. The heavy oak front door opens and slams shut behind her. I sit back down in the chair. The room is quiet again. The performance is over. But the retreat of the enabler does not end the war. Susan fled because she knows they are running out of options. The bank freeze was only the first defensive measure. The financial institution needs to resolve the liability of the forged document, and they are not going to wait for a family payment plan. That evening, Victoria calls my phone. Her voice is sharp. The bank has finished their initial review of the signature discrepancy, she informs me. They are escalating the timeline. They have issued a formal ultimatum to Richard. I ask what the terms are. He has exactly 72 hours to produce a verified notarized signature proving you consented to the transfer, Victoria says. If he cannot produce a legitimate notary stamp confirming your presence at the time of the withdrawal, the bank will automatically refer the case to the federal authorities for wire fraud prosecution. The tension tightens. The clock starts ticking down from 72 hours. Richard is cornered, desperate and out of time. And while he is scrambling to avoid a prison sentence, Brittany is busy planning a party. The 72-hour deadline established by the Bank Fraud Division is not a casual suggestion. It is a rigid, mechanical countdown. The financial institution demands a verified document bearing a legitimate notary seal to prove I was physically present and consenting to the transfer of my inheritance. Richard knows he cannot produce this. Forging my handwriting was an act of arrogant desperation, but forging a state notary stamp elevates the crime to a separate and much more complex felony. He cannot fake a notary ledger. He has only one remaining option to avoid a federal wire fraud indictment. He has to return the money. He needs to deposit $115,000 back into the custodial account and pray the bank drops the internal investigation. But Richard has no liquid capital. Victoria froze his checking accounts and his corporate expense lines. His credit cards are useless pieces of plastic. He turns to his last significant asset. He looks at the 4-bedroom brick colonial home in the Atlanta suburbs. My parents have lived in that house for 2 decades. The mortgage is mostly paid down. Richard assumes the equity sitting in those brick walls is his ultimate safety net. He believes he can simply extract the cash, replace the stolen trust funds, and force the problem to vanish into thin air. On Monday morning, Richard drives to the office of a private mortgage broker he has known for several years. He wears a tailored suit. He polishes his shoes. He walks into the glass-walled office projecting the calm confidence of a successful businessman managing a minor cash flow issue. He sits across from the loan officer, crosses his legs, and asks for a fast-track home equity line of credit. He requests $120,000. He smiles and blames a slow quarter at his marketing firm. He expects a handshake and a swift approval. The loan officer nods, turns to his computer monitor, and types the property address into the county database to verify the title. Richard sits back in the leather chair, waiting for the paperwork. He does not know that Victoria is already 3 steps ahead of him. He does not know that while he was screaming at me on the phone last week, Victoria was filing documents at the Fulton County Courthouse. The loan officer stops typing. He frowns at the screen. He presses a key, and the printer in the corner of the office hums to life. The officer takes the single sheet of paper and slides it across the desk toward my father. Richard looks down. He expects a loan application. Instead, he sees a formal legal notice. Victoria placed a lis pendens on the property. In the legal world, a lis pendens is a public declaration of pending litigation involving a specific piece of real estate. Victoria filed a formal claim stating that the property was maintained using stolen trust funds, linking the house directly to the ongoing embezzlement dispute. The notice acts like a deadbolt on the deed. It creates a dark cloud over the title. No legitimate bank or private lender will ever underwrite a loan against a property that is locked in a fraud lawsuit. The asset is entirely paralyzed. The mortgage broker looks at Richard with a mixture of pity and professional distance. He slides the application into the trash can. He denies the loan outright. He tells my father there is nothing he can do until the title is cleared in a court of law. Richard walks out of the brokerage firm with nothing. The Georgia sun beats down on the asphalt parking lot. He is completely boxed in. He cannot borrow. He cannot sell. He cannot access his savings. The 72-hour clock is still ticking, bleeding away the final moments of his freedom. While Richard is quietly drowning in the reality of his own ruin, the rest of his household operates in a blinding state of delusion. Brittany knows nothing about the frozen accounts. She knows nothing about the forged signature or the impending felony charges. She lives in a sealed bubble of unearned privilege, and she is currently focused on her favorite subject, herself. My sister has always treated minor life milestones as royal coronations. Earning a basic real estate license is no exception. She refuses to celebrate with a quiet family dinner. She demands an event. She calls it her professional launch party. She wants to announce her arrival to the Atlanta real estate market with a high society gala. She spends her Monday sitting at the dining room table entirely surrounded by fabric swatches, floral arrangements, and expensive catering menus. She selects an upscale country club just outside the city perimeter. The venue features vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling glass doors that open onto a manicured golf course. Brittany insists on booking the main ballroom. She plans to invite 200 guests, including local brokers, wealthy neighbors, and every sorority sister she has kept in touch with. Most importantly, she demands a specific parking arrangement. She wants her new custom Range Rover Velar parked directly in the VIP circle right outside the glass doors of the ballroom. She views the $115,000 vehicle as the ultimate centerpiece for her new professional identity. It is a prop designed to prove she is already successful. Richard and Susan return to the house that evening to find Brittany finalizing the guest list. The contrast is sharp and brutal. Richard is sweating through his suit, staring down the barrel of a federal indictment, while his eldest daughter chatters about ice sculptures and premium open bars. A rational parent would stop the madness. A rational parent would sit their daughter down, explain the financial collapse, and cancel the event. But Richard and Susan are not rational. They are driven entirely by the fear of social humiliation. Canceling the country club gala would force them to admit to their wealthy peers that they are broke. It would expose the cracks in their perfect facade. For my parents, social death is far worse than actual death. They decide to maintain the illusion at all costs. Susan retreats to her bedroom and pulls out the navy blue checkbook she tried to use on me in Savannah. She calculates the remaining balance in her hidden emergency fund. It is just enough to cover the non-refundable deposit for the country club ballroom and the catering minimums. She writes the check, draining the very last drop of their available liquid cash. She hands it to Brittany with a tight, strained smile, pretending it is a joyous investment in her daughter's future. They commit to a massive party they cannot afford to host, celebrating a career that has not yet started using a car they do not actually own. Victoria calls me in Savannah to provide an update on the Liz pendants. I sit in my grandmother's parlor listening to the tactical breakdown. Victoria explains how the mortgage denial effectively traps Richard in a corner with no exits. The bank fraud division will not grant an extension. When the clock runs out, the file automatically transfers to the prosecuting authorities. I tell Victoria about the launch party. I saw the digital invitation Brittany posted publicly on her social media feed. The date of the gala catches my attention. I read the numbers aloud. Victoria goes silent on the other end of the line. I hear the rapid click of her keyboard as she pulls up her calendar. Diana, Victoria says, her voice lowering into a tone of genuine disbelief. The bank deadline expires on Thursday evening. Your sister scheduled her country club party for that exact same night. The stage for the climax is being built by the antagonists themselves. They are spending their last remaining dollars to gather 200 of their most important social contacts into a single room. They are putting the stolen vehicle on public display. They are setting up bright lights and hiring a string quartet, entirely unaware that they are decorating their own execution chamber. Evelyn walks into the parlor carrying a silver tray with 2 glasses of iced water. She sets the tray down and looks at me. I relay the information about the party and the overlapping deadline. My grandmother does not smile. She does not gloat. She simply looks out the window at the dark Georgia evening. It seems we are going back to Atlanta, Evelyn says quietly. Tell your lawyer to prepare the final documents. We have an invitation to accept. The trap is primed, the countdown is almost over, and my family is preparing to throw a celebration right in the middle of the blast zone. The night of the climax arrives on a Thursday. The air in Atlanta is thick, holding the residual heat of the late afternoon sun. The setting for my sister's professional launch is the Oakmont Country Club, an exclusive venue situated just outside the city perimeter. It is the kind of establishment that requires a sponsorship just to join the waiting list. The driveway is lined with imported oak trees, and the front entrance features tall white marble columns. This entire spectacle is funded by the very last drop of Susan's hidden emergency cash. She drained her secret account to rent the main ballroom. She paid the premium catering minimums. She hired the classical string quartet currently playing near the coat check. She bought the illusion of elite status for one single evening, prioritizing a party over her husband's impending federal indictment. The ballroom is filled with 200 guests. The guest list is a carefully curated collection of people my parents need to impress. There are local real estate brokers wearing expensive watches. There are wealthy neighbors from their subdivision. There are family friends who measure a person's worth by their zip code and their vacation destinations. These are shallow relationships built entirely on the mutual exchange of social currency. Richard and Susan invited these people to prove the Hughes family is thriving. Brittany is in her element. She stands near the premium open bar holding court. She wears a floor-length emerald green gown covered in intricate sequins that catch the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead. She holds a crystal flute of champagne. She laughs loudly at a joke made by a senior managing broker. She acts as though she has already conquered the Atlanta real estate market at 21 years old. She nods and uses industry buzzwords she barely understands. She is playing the role of the young, successful prodigy. She made sure her favorite prop was visible to every single person in the room. The main ballroom features a wall of floor-to-ceiling glass doors that open onto a manicured terrace. Directly beyond the terrace is a circular brick driveway reserved for VIP drop-offs. The custom Range Rover Velar is parked directly in the center of that circle. Brittany gave the valet staff specific instructions to leave the vehicle there. It is positioned under a set of bright halogen security lights. The dark gray paint shines against the night sky. The silver crest on the grille is unmistakable. It practically serves as the centerpiece for the event. Guests walk up to the glass point at the car and compliment Brittany on her early success. She smiles and accepts the praise, never once mentioning that the leather seats were paid for by her grandfather's labor and her younger sister's stolen future. The digital clock on the dashboard of that stolen car reads 8 o'clock, the exact minute the bank fraud deadline expires. The heavy mahogany doors at the main entrance of the ballroom swing open. I step inside. I do not wear sequins. I wear a simple, structured black dress and flat shoes. The surgical staples across my abdomen pinch as I walk, but my posture is straight. I am flanked by Grandmother Evelyn and Victoria. We do not blend into the crowd. We do not look like guests arriving to celebrate a new career. We look like a reckoning. Evelyn wears a tailored silver pantsuit. She carries a vintage leather clutch. She is 72 years old, but she moves with the sharp, undeniable authority of a woman who owns commercial city blocks. Evelyn does not lease her wealth like the people in this room. She built it. She commands respect simply by entering a space. Victoria walks on my right side. She wears her dark navy courtroom attire. Her heels strike the marble floor with military precision. She carries the heavy leather briefcase containing the forensic handwriting analysis, the audio confession, and the finalized civil lawsuit. The trio of us moves through the crowded room with the synchronized precision of an execution squad. The music is loud. The champagne is flowing. The illusion of my family's perfect life is on full magnificent display. Waiters carry silver trays of roasted tenderloin and crab cakes. The room smells of expensive floral centerpieces and high-end perfume. We bypass the greeting line. We ignore the guest book. We walk directly into the center of the ballroom, cutting a path through the sea of cocktail dresses and tailored tuxedos. People notice us. It is not a sudden dramatic silence like a movie scene. It is a subtle spreading ripple. A few conversations pause. A few heads turn. Wealthy people have a unique radar for genuine power, and Evelyn radiates it. A neighbor recognizes me and offers a confused wave. I do not wave back. I keep my eyes focused straight ahead. Richard is standing near the center of the room. He is talking to a group of potential clients for his marketing firm. He holds a glass of bourbon on the rocks. He is leaning back, telling a story, flashing his bright, practiced smile. He is pretending his personal checking accounts are not currently locked by a federal court order. He is pretending his mortgage did not bounce. He is pretending he is a king. He turns his head to signal a waiter for another drink. His gaze sweeps across the room. His eyes pass over the floral arrangements. They pass over the string quartet. And then they lock onto me. His eyes shift from my face to the woman standing on my left. He recognizes his own mother. He sees the cold, unyielding judgment written across Evelyn's features. Then his eyes shift to the woman on my right. He does not know Victoria personally, but a man drowning in legal trouble recognizes a corporate attorney the same way a wounded animal recognizes a predator. He looks at the heavy leather briefcase in her hand. I watch the physical reaction take hold of his body. It is instantaneous. The bright, practiced smile falls off his face. The blood drains from his cheeks, leaving his skin a pale, sickly gray. The hand holding the bourbon glass begins to shake, rattling the ice cubes against the crystal. The facade he has spent decades maintaining is suddenly walking directly toward him. He checks the gold watch on his left wrist. It is past 8 o'clock. He knows the 72-hour window has closed. The Bank Fraud Division has officially submitted the forged early release document to the prosecuting authorities. The countdown is over. The reality he tried to avoid by hiding in this country club has found him. He looks around the ballroom. He sees the 200 guests he invited. He sees the business associates he relies on to fund his lifestyle. He sees the neighbors he tries to impress. He realizes that whatever is inside the lawyer's briefcase is about to be deployed right here under the crystal chandeliers in front of his entire social circle. The public execution has officially begun. Richard breaks away from his conversation. He does not excuse himself politely. He simply turns his back on the potential clients and starts walking toward us. His steps are fast, almost a panicked jog. He wants to intercept us before we reach the center of the room. He wants to drag the conflict into the shadows. He wants to maintain the illusion for just a few more minutes. I stop walking. Evelyn and Victoria stop beside me. We do not retreat. We plant our feet on the polished marble floor and wait for the patriarch to reach us. The music swells around us, but all I can hear is the steady, inevitable approach of the man who stole my future walking straight into the trap he built for himself. Richard closes the distance between us in a matter of seconds. He does not acknowledge Evelyn. He does not look at Victoria. He focuses his entire existence on me. His hand shoots out. His fingers clamp around my left elbow. The grip is tight. It borders on painful. He pulls me hard to the right, steering me away from the open floor of the ballroom and the curious eyes of his business associates. He drags me into a secluded hallway near the coat check desk. The attendant is absent. The space is lined with empty wooden hangers, waiting for winter coats that no one wears in a Georgia summer. The lighting here is dim, cast by brass wall sconces, rather than the blinding crystal chandeliers of the main room. The loud, vibrant chatter of the 200 guests becomes a muffled, distant hum. The string quartet is playing an upbeat classical arrangement, and the bass notes thud softly through the thick drywall. He traps me against the dark wood paneling of the hallway. He leans in close. His breath hits my face. It is a sharp, acidic mixture of expensive single malt scotch and raw, unadulterated panic. His chest heaves against his tailored suit jacket. A single bead of sweat traces a line down his temple, catching the dim light of the sconce. "You have no right to be here," he hisses. The words are sharp and fast. He raises his hand and points a finger directly at my face. The finger is trembling. He cannot control the fine motor movements of his own body. "You call off your attack dogs right now." He is trying to run his old playbook. When I was a child, Richard never disciplined us in public. He cared too much about his reputation as the perfect father. If I dropped a glass or asked the wrong question at a dinner party, he would smile for the guests. Then he would wait until the house was empty, pull me into his home office, close the heavy oak door, and use his booming voice to strip away my confidence. He isolated his targets. He controlled the environment. He is trying to do the exact same thing right now in this coat check alcove. He thinks the rules of my childhood still apply. He thinks if he separates me from the crowd, I will revert to the quiet, obedient workhorse who absorbs his anger without question. "Or I swear to God, Diana," he continues, his voice dropping into a low, venomous whisper, "you will never step foot in our house again. You will be dead to this family." I stand perfectly still against the wood paneling. I look at the man who was supposed to protect me. I look at the father who was supposed to guard my future, not steal it to finance a fragile social facade. I wait for the familiar spike of anxiety to hit my chest. I wait for the old biological instinct to kick in. I wait for the urge to shrink, to apologize, to smooth over his temper and beg for his approval. The instinct does not come. I do not feel fear. I do not feel intimidated by his physical proximity. I only feel a deep, heavy, stoic exhaustion. I am looking at a hollow man. He is offering banishment as his ultimate penalty. He does not understand that he is threatening to take away something I have already buried. He is threatening to revoke my membership to a family that left me drowning in medical debt while they drank champagne over a new car. I do not argue with him. I do not raise my voice to match his panic. I slowly lower my hands. I open the brass clasp of my black leather clutch. I reach inside the silk lining. My fingers find the thick white envelope Victoria prepared for me. I pull it out. The paper is heavy premium cardstock. It feels substantial in my hands. I hold it out toward his chest. Richard stares at the white square. He refuses to take it. He glares at me, trying to reassert his dominance through sheer willpower. Victoria steps forward from the shadows of the hallway. She does not say a word. She simply stands shoulder to shoulder with me, presenting a united front of legal ruin. Her presence forces his hand. Richard snatches the envelope from my fingers. He tears the sealed flap. He pulls out the thick stack of folded documents. The hallway is quiet enough that I can hear the crisp rustle of the paper as he flattens the pages. He unfolds the first page. It is the finalized civil lawsuit. His eyes scan the bold black text at the top of the page. He sees his own name listed as the primary defendant. He sees the specific charges of fiduciary breach and gross financial mismanagement. He sees the exact dollar amount of $115,000 printed in the summary section. He flips to the second page. This is the forensic handwriting analysis. It contains side-by-side highly magnified photographs. On the left side of the page is my actual signature pulled from state driver records. On the right side is the sprawling, arrogant loops he drew on the bank release form. The independent forensic expert has drawn sharp red arrows pointing to 12 distinct discrepancies. The angle of the slant, the pressure of the pen, the spacing of the letters. It is the signature of a narcissist. Richard could not even hide his own ego when committing fraud. His capital letters are always too large, his trailing letters always end in a sharp flick. It is 12 undeniable points of evidence proving he falsified a federal document. He flips to the final pages. This is the criminal referral. It is a formal letter drafted by Victoria printed on her firm official letterhead, addressed directly to the District Attorney of Fulton County. The letter outlines the undeniable proof of felony embezzlement and wire fraud, formally requesting an immediate criminal indictment. I watch his eyes dart back and forth across the legal text. Evelyn watches him too, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She is standing in the dim light of the coat check hallway, witnessing the end of her son's pretend empire. I am not here to negotiate, Dad, I say. My voice is even. It cuts cleanly through the muffled bass of the party music bleeding through the walls. I am here to let you read the script before the curtain drops. I watch the physical collapse of my father. It does not happen all at once. It happens by degrees. His shoulders, which he usually pulls back in a posture of forced dominance, begin to slump inward. The color does not return to his face. The papers tremble so hard in his hands that the pages rustle against each other. He looks at the forensic photographs again. He looks at the letter addressed to the prosecutor. He realizes his signature is not a defense. It is his confession. He realizes Victoria did not just freeze his accounts to annoy him. She froze them to hold him in place while she built a prison around him. He realizes he has entirely lost. There is no charm that can fix a forensic report. There is no business lunch that can smooth over a felony wire fraud charge. The money is gone. The accounts are locked. The evidence is printed in black and white. He looks up from the papers. He looks at me. The anger is gone. The rage has evaporated, replaced by the hollow, wide-eyed stare of a man who has just stepped off a cliff. He opens his mouth. He wants to speak. He wants to beg for mercy. He wants to ask me to take the papers back. But before he can form a single syllable of a desperate apology, a sharp ringing sound echoes from the main ballroom. It is a distinct rhythmic noise. Someone is tapping a silver spoon against a crystal champagne flute. The sound cuts through the chatter of the 200 guests, commanding absolute silence. Brittany is calling for the room to pay attention. She is standing by the floor-to-ceiling glass doors, preparing to give her grand speech to her new colleagues. And outside those glass doors, hidden in the dark shadows of the VIP parking circle, the heavy mechanical gears of a commercial tow truck begin to grind. The sharp ringing of the silver spoon against the crystal flute pulls my attention away from the coat check hallway. I leave Richard standing in the dim light. I do not wait for him to find his voice. I turn my back on him. Evelyn and Victoria pivot with me. We step out of the shadows and walk back into the bright, opulent glow of the main ballroom. The timing is immaculate. Brittany stands on a low-carpeted stage positioned directly in front of the sweeping wall of floor-to-ceiling glass doors. The dark night presses against the glass, acting as a dramatic backdrop. 200 guests turn their attention toward her. The string quartet fades into silence. Waiters stop circulating with silver trays. The room falls into a polite, expectant hush. Susan stands in the front row of the crowd. She looks radiant. She holds a fresh glass of wine. She has no idea that her husband is currently suffocating under the weight of a felony indictment just 50 feet away. She beams at her eldest daughter, soaking in the admiration of the wealthy neighbors and elite real estate brokers surrounding her. Brittany lowers the silver spoon. She holds a microphone in her right hand. She smiles. It is a practiced, blinding smile designed for cameras and high society magazines. She welcomes everyone to her professional launch. She speaks about dedication. She talks about the grueling hours required to secure her real estate license. She uses words like perseverance and sacrifice. I stand near the back of the room with Victoria and Evelyn. The irony of my sister's speech hangs thick in the air. She is talking about sacrifice, while wearing a designer gown funded by the last drops of our mother's hidden emergency savings. She is talking about perseverance, while claiming a career built on the ashes of my stolen inheritance. She genuinely believes her own narrative. She believes she earned this moment. I just want to thank my incredible parents, Brittany says into the microphone. Her voice echoes through the vaulted ceilings of the country club. They gave me the tools to succeed. They believed in my potential when this was just a dream. They taught me that hard work always pays off. She turns her body. She gestures grandly toward the dark glass behind her. She points directly at the VIP parking circle. The halogen security lights illuminate the dark gray exterior of the Range Rover Velar. The silver crest catches the light. The guests follow her gesture. They nod in approval. The applause begins. It starts in the front row with Susan and ripples backward through the room. It is a warm, congratulatory sound. It is the sound of high society validating one of their own. But as the clapping reaches its peak, a new sound joins the chorus. It is a low mechanical groan. It vibrates through the thick glass doors. The deep, heavy rumble of a commercial diesel engine rolls over the polite applause, swallowing the sound of the clapping hands. The guests stop clapping. They lower their hands. They turn their heads, peering through the glass, to see what is disrupting the pristine environment of the Oakmont Country Club. A heavy-duty flatbed tow truck reverses into the VIP circle. The truck does not belong here. It is an industrial machine scarred with rust and covered in road grime. Bright amber strobe lights flash on the roof of the cab, casting harsh rotating yellow beams across the manicured terrace and piercing through the glass doors of the ballroom. The yellow light sweeps across the faces of the wealthy attendees, painting them in an unnatural, jarring color. The truck stops mere inches from the front bumper of the custom SUV. The diesel engine idles loud and rough. The driver door swings open. A man steps out onto the immaculate brick driveway. He wears stained denim work pants, heavy steel-toed boots, and a reflective safety vest. He is a stark, jarring contrast to the tuxedo-clad guests standing on the other side of the glass. He does not care about the country club dress code. He does not care about the launch party. He walks straight to the back of his flatbed. He pulls a heavy steel lever. The hydraulic winch whines a high-pitched mechanical scream that cuts right through the elegant atmosphere. Inside the ballroom, the confusion turns into shock. Brittany stops smiling. Her arm still extended toward the vehicle slowly drops to her side. She stares through the glass. Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. The crystal champagne flute slips from her manicured fingers. It falls in slow motion. It hits the polished marble floor. The sharp, sudden crash of shattering glass echoes across the silent room. Champagne splatters across the hem of her sequined gown. The repo man unspools a thick steel cable. He drops to one knee on the brick driveway. He reaches under the front bumper of the $115,000 vehicle. The heavy metal hooks clank against the steel axle. The sound is final. It is the sound of an undeniable legal reality locking into place. "Hey!" Brittany screams. Her voice is raw, shattering the polite silence of the room. She drops the microphone. It hits the stage with a loud electronic feedback squeal that makes several guests cover their ears. She leaps off the low stage. She sprints toward the glass doors. Her emerald gown drags across the shattered crystal and spilled champagne. She reaches the glass and slams her open palms against the thick pane. "What are you doing?" she yells, her voice muffled by the heavy glass. "That is my car. Stop it right now." The repo man does not even look up. He operates with the unwavering confidence of a man holding a bulletproof court order. He stands up, brushes the dirt off his knees, and pulls the hydraulic lever. The heavy winch groans again. The thick steel cable pulls tight. The front end of the luxury vehicle lifts off the ground. The expensive tires hang uselessly in the air. Victoria stands beside me, watching the mechanical execution of her legal strategy. The bank did not send this tow truck. The bank was still waiting for the 72-hour window to close. Victoria sent the truck. 48 hours ago, she took the forensic handwriting analysis and the audio confession to a Fulton County judge. She filed an emergency ex parte motion for an immediate asset seizure. She proved beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt that the vehicle sitting in the VIP circle was purchased directly with embezzled trust funds. The judge granted the order without notifying my parents. The vehicle is no longer a status symbol. It is physical evidence in an active federal felony investigation. The crowd of 200 guests stands frozen in a state of horrifying silence. The scene unfolding in front of them breaks every unwritten rule of their social class. Financial ruin is supposed to happen quietly. It is supposed to be hidden behind closed doors and handled by discreet attorneys. It is never supposed to be dragged into the light under flashing amber strobes. The whispers start. The sound spreads through the room like a sudden breeze rustling dry leaves. The brokers and the neighbors lean their heads together. They point at the truck. They point at Brittany, who is currently pounding her fists against the glass, her perfect hair falling into her face, her makeup streaking with tears of humiliation. The social currency of the Hughes family evaporates in real time. Susan stands in the front row, paralyzed. Her hands fly up to cover her mouth. Her eyes are wide with sheer terror. She looks around the room, making eye contact with the women from her tennis club and the wives of her husband's clients. She sees the pity in their eyes. She sees the judgment. The illusion she drained her secret bank account to build has shattered into a million unfixable pieces. Richard steps out of the coat check hallway. He walks slowly to the edge of the crowd. He holds the thick white envelope in his shaking hand. He watches his daughter scream at the glass. He watches the heavy tow truck hoist the symbol of his arrogance onto the flatbed. He does not try to stop it. He knows the legal reality waiting in the envelope. He knows fighting the repo man will only lead to an immediate arrest in front of his entire social circle. He is trapped in a prison of his own making, forced to watch his reputation burn to the ground. The tow truck driver secures the rear tires with heavy nylon straps. He walks back to the cab of the truck. He climbs inside and shuts the door. The diesel engine revs. A thick puff of black exhaust smoke shoots out of the tailpipe, drifting across the pristine terrace. The truck shifts into gear. It pulls away from the VIP circle, hauling the dark gray Range Rover out of the halogen security lights and into the dark Georgia night. The circular driveway is empty. The strobe lights fade. The centerpiece is gone. Brittany presses her forehead against the cool glass. Her shoulders shake with heavy, breathless sobs. She looks at the empty brick pavers. She does not understand how her perfect world just vanished. She does not understand the legal mechanics of trust law or wire fraud. She only knows she has been humiliated in front of everyone she cares about. The ballroom falls into a dead, suffocating silence. No one speaks. The string quartet sits with their bows resting on their knees, unsure if they should resume playing. The waiters stand frozen by the kitchen doors. The guests stare at the Hughes family, waiting for an explanation that will never come. Evelyn steps forward. Her silver shoes tap against the marble floor. The quiet sound commands the attention of everyone in the room. The public execution has stripped Richard and Susan of their armor. They are exposed, bankrupt, and drowning in scandal. The civil dispute has ended. The criminal investigation has begun. But Evelyn is not finished. The state of Georgia will handle the legal punishment, but the matriarch of the family is about to deliver the final, fatal social judgment. She walks toward the center of the room, preparing to silence the crowd once and for all. The chaotic murmurs sweep through the stunned crowd. The sound is low and urgent. It is the sound of 200 elite guests recalibrating their social alliances in real time. The wealthy men and women of Atlanta high society do not tolerate public scandal. They survive by associating only with success. They look at the empty brick pavers outside the glass doors, where the luxury vehicle sat just moments ago. Then they look at Brittany. She is kneeling on the polished marble floor. Her designer emerald gown is soaked in spilled champagne and surrounded by shards of shattered crystal. Her carefully curated professional launch has mutated into a public nightmare. She is weeping. Her chest heaves with heavy, erratic sobs. Her makeup runs down her cheeks in dark, thick streaks. She looks up at the faces of her sorority sisters and the real estate mentors she tried to impress. She expects them to rush forward. She expects them to kneel beside her and offer sympathy. She expects the world to cater to her pain. No one steps forward. No one offers her a napkin. The guests are already physically backing away. They treat the Hughes family as if their sudden ruin is a contagious disease. Susan stands in the front row of the crowd. Her face is pale. She stares at her eldest daughter on the floor, but she does not move to comfort her. Susan is paralyzed by the sudden evaporation of her social standing. She makes eye contact with a woman she plays tennis with every Tuesday morning. The woman averts her gaze and takes a deliberate step backward into the crowd. That single step destroys Susan. She understands the currency of her world better than anyone. She knows she will never be invited to another charity luncheon. She knows her country club membership is effectively void. The women she spent years gossiping with will now spend the next decade gossiping about her. The illusion she spent her last remaining dollars to protect has fractured in the most spectacular and public way possible. She has no money left in her secret checking account. She has no equity in her home. She is standing in a rented ballroom with a worthless wine glass in her hand, staring down the barrel of total isolation. Evelyn steps forward. Her silver shoes tap against the marble floor. It is a quiet sound, but it carries a distinct rhythm of authority. She walks past the whispering brokers and the horrified neighbors. She walks past Susan. She stops in the dead center of the ballroom. She stands near the low-carpeted stage where Brittany dropped the microphone. Evelyn does not pick up the electronic device. A woman who owns commercial city blocks does not need electronic amplification to command a room. She possesses a natural, undeniable gravity. The murmurs die down. The whispers cease. The string quartet members sit frozen in their chairs, holding their wooden bows in the air. The silence in the ballroom becomes total. It is a heavy, expectant quiet. 200 people hold their breath, waiting for the matriarch to explain the arrival of the tow truck. Evelyn does not look at the weeping girl on the floor. She turns her gaze outward, sweeping across the faces of the assembled guests. When she speaks, her voice is clear and sharp. It echoes off the vaulted ceilings of the Oakmont Country Club. That vehicle was purchased with funds embezzled from my granddaughter Diana's trust. The words hang in the air. They are precise, clinical, and devastating. Evelyn does not use soft language. She does not call it a family misunderstanding. She calls it embezzlement. She names the crime in front of the very people Richard and Susan were trying to impress. A collective intake of breath ripples through the room. A local real estate broker near the bar sets his glass down and stares. The charity board members exchange wide-eyed glances. Susan gasps loudly. The sound is a pathetic, hollow noise. She brings both of her hands up to cover her face, attempting to hide from the judgment of her peers. She shrinks into herself, trying to disappear into the fabric of her beige dress. But there is nowhere to hide under the bright crystal chandeliers. Richard stands frozen by the coat check hallway. He is trapped on the perimeter of the room. He still holds the thick white envelope containing his forensic doom. The heavy paper shakes in his trembling hands, making a faint, crisp sound that he can hear over the quiet murmurs of the room. He looks at his mother standing in the center of the ballroom. He looks at the faces of his golf partners and his prospective marketing clients. He sees the raw, unfiltered disgust in their eyes. The men he spent decades trying to impress now look at him with undisguised contempt. A man who steals from his own child is a liability. A man who gets caught doing it is a fool. Richard visibly shrinks under the collective gaze of his peers. His broad shoulders cave inward. The confident posture he used to dominate boardrooms evaporates. He looks small. He looks fragile. He is a shell of a patriarch waiting for the final strike. Evelyn is not finished. She turns her head and locks her eyes directly onto Richard across the wide expanse of the ballroom floor. She does not raise her voice to reach him. The silence is so profound that a whisper would carry. Richard, you have disgraced this family. The sentence is a definitive ruling. It strips him of his patriarchal authority. It strips him of his dignity. It echoes through the large room, leaving no room for debate or misinterpretation. You stole from your own child to feed your ego. You violated your fiduciary duty. You allowed your youngest daughter to sit in a hospital room, drowning in debt, while you purchased a status symbol to parade in front of strangers. You are a thief. You dressed your theft in a tailored suit and called it a family sacrifice, but you are nothing more than a common criminal. The crowd stares entirely paralyzed. High society is accustomed to quiet rumors and discreet divorces. They are not accustomed to the raw, brutal transparency of elite dirty laundry being aired out in real time. They are witnessing an execution. They cannot look away. Evelyn pauses. She lets the reality of her words sink into the minds of the audience. She wants every person in the room to understand exactly who Richard Hughes really is. Then she prepares to deliver the final fatal blow. The blow that will ensure Richard and Susan can never rebuild their fragile illusion. Effective this morning, I have restructured my estate. Susan drops her hands from her face. She looks at Evelyn with renewed terror. Richard stops trembling and goes entirely rigid. They both know what Evelyn's estate represents. It represents millions of dollars in Savannah real estate. It represents commercial leases, steady dividend payouts, and generational security. It represents the ultimate safety net they assumed they would one day inherit to fund their retirement and cover their debts. Richard and Susan are permanently disinherited. The declaration rings out like a gunshot. It is a permanent financial death sentence. Every asset, every property, and every cent I own is now held in an irrevocable trust solely for Diana. You will never see a single dime of my money. You have forfeited your place in this family. The trust is impenetrable. It is managed by Victoria and her firm. You cannot contest it. You cannot borrow against it. You have nothing. The social death of Richard and Susan is instantaneous and absolute. In the span of 5 minutes, they have lost everything. They have no money. They have no credit. They have no future inheritance to borrow against. They have no defense against the forensic evidence sitting in the white envelope. And most importantly, they have no reputation. Their social standing is obliterated. The guests in the room will spend the next week spreading the story to every country club and corporate office in the greater Atlanta area. Richard will never sign another marketing client. Susan will never be welcomed at another social event. Brittany will never sell a single house to anyone in this zip code. They are social ghosts standing in a rented ballroom they cannot afford. Evelyn does not offer a concluding remark to the guests. She does not apologize for the disruption. She has delivered the truth, and she has delivered the consequences. She turns away from the crowd. She walks back toward me. Her silver shoes tap against the marble floor, marking the end of her reign over the room. She reaches my side. She extends her hand and gently takes my arm. Her grip is warm and steady. Victoria falls into step beside us. The heavy leather briefcase swings at her side, a stark reminder of the legal machinery that is still turning in the background. We walk toward the heavy mahogany front doors. The crowd reacts to our approach. They part like the Red Sea. The wealthy guests step aside, clearing a wide path for us. They do not say a word as we pass. They simply watch us leave. I look straight ahead. I do not look back at my father trembling by the hallway. I do not look at my mother covering her face. I do not look at my sister weeping over her ruined dress. The exhaustion in my chest begins to lift, replaced by a quiet, solid sense of peace. I survived the betrayal. I built a fortress they cannot breach. We push through the heavy doors and step out into the warm, humid night. The crickets chirp in the oak trees lining the driveway. The air smells like pine and rain. We leave the antagonists standing in the ruins of their own making, trapped in a silent room with their shattered pride. But the quiet of the night is deceptive. The social execution is complete, but the legal system operates on its own relentless schedule. The district attorney will open his mail on Monday morning, and Richard will realize that public humiliation was only the prologue to his punishment. The Monday morning after the country club gala brings a swift end to the waiting game. The Fulton County District Attorney opens the certified legal package Victoria delivered. The justice system is a blind, mechanical entity. It does not care about Richard's tailored suits or his country club sponsorships. It does not care that he was trying to protect a fragile social image. The system only processes facts, and the facts presented in Victoria's forensic package are indisputable. An assigned investigator reviews the forged bank release form and listens to the pristine audio recording of Richard confessing to the transfer. By Tuesday afternoon, a formal arrest warrant is issued. Richard is officially charged with felony forgery identity theft and the embezzlement of a custodial trust. He avoids the indignity of a public arrest by turning himself in at the county courthouse before the police can visit his office. He is processed like any other defendant. He is fingerprinted. He is photographed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the booking room. His tie is removed. His belt is confiscated. The patriarch of the Hughes family is reduced to a registered criminal defendant within the span of a single afternoon. Richard hires an expensive defense attorney using a high-interest personal loan he secures through a secondary lender. He expects the lawyer to find a loophole. He expects the legal system to bend to his will the way his family always did. But the defense attorney reviews the evidence and delivers a sobering reality. The audio recording destroys any claim of a family misunderstanding. The forensic handwriting analysis destroys any claim of clerical error. The attorney tells Richard that if he takes this case to trial, a jury will convict him in less than an hour. The mandatory sentencing guidelines for his crimes carry a penalty of 5 to 15 years in a state penitentiary. Richard is a man who relies on the illusion of control. The prospect of losing his freedom breaks his resolve entirely. To avoid a prison cell, he accepts a brutal plea deal negotiated by the district attorney. He pleads guilty to the felony charges. The terms of his surrender are severe. He must serve 5 years of strict supervised probation. He is subjected to random financial audits. He must report to a probation officer every month. He permanently forfeits his right to act as a financial fiduciary or hold a corporate treasury position in the state of Georgia. His boutique marketing firm dissolves within weeks as clients flee the scandal. But the most pressing term of the plea deal is the financial restitution. The judge orders Richard to repay the stolen $115,000 in full within 90 days, or the probation will be revoked and he will be sent to prison. 90 days is a terrifyingly short timeline for a man with locked assets and zero credit. Richard and Susan are trapped. They cannot secure a commercial loan. They cannot borrow from their former friends. The wealthy neighbors who witnessed the gala disaster no longer answer their phone calls. The only option left is the brick colonial house in the Atlanta suburbs. It is the house where I grew up. It is the physical monument to their supposed success. They are forced to put the property on the market immediately, but the real estate market is ruthless. Buyers smell blood in the water, they see the urgent listing, and they know the sellers are desperate. Richard and Susan receive a single all-cash offer for a fraction of the actual market value. They have no leverage to negotiate. They accept the steep loss. The proceeds from the hasty sale are just enough to cover the court-mandated restitution and clear their outstanding legal debts. They pack 2 decades of curated wealth into cheap cardboard boxes. They hire a discount moving company. They leave the manicured lawns and the quiet suburban streets. They sign a lease on a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the extreme outskirts of the city. Their new living room window faces a noisy interstate highway. The constant roar of diesel trucks replaces the quiet hum of their old country club life. The walls are thin. The carpets are cheap. They are forced to live in the exact kind of environment they spent their entire lives mocking. The financial collapse drags my sister down with it. Brittany wakes up the morning after the gala without her luxury vehicle and without her parents' endless funding. She assumes she can simply rely on her newly minted real estate license to maintain her lifestyle. She attempts to attend a broker open house the following week. She puts on a designer dress and prepares to network. She is turned away at the front door. The Atlanta real estate community is a small, interconnected ecosystem. Gossip travels faster than property listings. Every broker in the city knows about the tow truck at the Oakmont Country Club. They know her car was seized as evidence in a federal wire fraud investigation. No respectable brokerage will sponsor the license of an agent tied to a high-profile embezzlement scandal. She is deemed a severe liability. Her career implodes before she even prints her business cards. Without a job, and without her parents' credit cards, she faces the cold reality of basic survival. She is forced to apply for entry-level work. She takes a minimum wage retail job at a cosmetics counter in a sprawling suburban shopping mall. The golden child who spent her childhood competing in pageants now spends 8 hours a day standing on her feet under harsh neon lights, offering perfume samples to strangers. She rides the public bus because she cannot afford a reliable used car. Her designer clothes slowly wear out, and she cannot afford to replace them. She learns the definition of manual labor, and she learns it the hard way. She spends her lunch breaks sitting on a bench in the food court, eating cheap food, and watching other people buy the things she used to take for granted. The final consequence arrives on a quiet Tuesday morning in Savannah. I am sitting in the sunroom of my grandmother's house. The weather has cooled, signaling the early arrival of autumn. I am reading a book when my phone chimes with an automated notification. It is an alert from my banking application. I set the book down. I pick up the phone and open the screen. The buffer wheel spins for 2 seconds. Then the numbers load. The balance is no longer zero. The screen displays exactly $115,000. The stolen funds have been returned to my account down to the exact cent. The state routed the money from the sale of the house directly into my control. I trace the numbers on the glass screen. I do not feel a sudden rush of victory. I do not jump up and celebrate. The money was never a lottery winning. It was always mine. It was the physical manifestation of my grandfather's quiet grinding labor. It was my independence. Returning it does not erase the betrayal, but it neutralizes the damage. Richard and Susan tried to manipulate the financial system to feed their vanity. Instead, that very same system stripped them of their wealth, their reputation, and their power. The antagonists are fundamentally broken. They are serving their sentences in a cramped apartment and a crowded shopping mall, entirely erased from the elite world they sacrificed everything to join. The war is over. The battlefield is clear. Now I only have to decide what to do with the peace they left behind. A full year passes. The heavy Georgia heat softens into a crisp late October evening. I am sitting on the sweeping front porch of a Victorian home in the historic district of Savannah. The house is painted a pale shade of blue. It features tall sash windows and a thick oak front door with a brass handle. I purchased this property 3 months ago. It sits on a quiet tree-lined street just 4 miles away from Evelyn's residence. The wooden floorboards creak a little when I shift my weight, but the sound is steady and grounding. It is the sound of a structure that has weathered decades of storms and remained upright. I hold a tall glass of iced sweet tea. The condensation drips down the side of the glass, wetting my fingers. I listen to the cicadas hum in the thick evening air. Their song is a constant rhythmic pulse in the background. It feels like a natural heartbeat. Sitting here on this porch, I am surrounded by a world that operates on natural laws instead of manufactured drama. I did not use my recovered inheritance to buy a luxury vehicle. I did not purchase sequined gowns or rent out upscale country club ballrooms to demand applause from strangers. I took the $115,000 and drove into downtown Savannah. I signed a commercial lease on a small brick building with large storefront windows. I painted the interior walls a warm, calming yellow. I purchased high-grade physical rehabilitation equipment. I hired a receptionist named Claire, who greets every single person with genuine, unforced kindness. I used my grandfather's legacy to open an independent physical therapy clinic. My days are spent doing actual rigorous labor. I help patients regain their mobility after severe car crashes and joint replacement surgeries. I treat a retired electrician named Thomas, who suffered a stroke last winter. Thomas spends 3 days a week in my clinic gripping rubber resistance bands with trembling hands. His face turns red with exertion. He breathes heavy through his teeth. He does not ask for an audience to validate his struggle. He does not post videos of his therapy sessions for online praise. He just wants to build enough strength to hold his newborn grandson's hand. That is what actual value looks like. It is quiet. It is hard. It requires patience and grit. I watch Thomas fight for every inch of progress, and I think about my sister standing under the bright halogen lights of her fake professional launch party. She wanted the appearance of success without a single drop of sweat. She wanted the crown without the climb. I chose the sweat. My clinic is currently booked 3 months in advance. The schedule is full because the business is built on a foundation of genuine utility rather than a fragile illusion. I have not spoken to my father since he dragged me into that dark coat check hallway. I have not spoken to my mother since she tried to hand me a navy blue checkbook in Evelyn's parlor. I have not spoken to Brittany since she screamed at the tow truck driver through the thick glass doors of the ballroom. They are ghosts to me now. They exist in a distant city, living a reality defined by court dates, probation officers, and retail shifts. They reside in a cramped apartment near a noisy interstate highway, paying the daily price for their own vanity. I do not check their social media pages. I do not ask mutual acquaintances for updates. I cut the cord clean. Sometimes new friends in Savannah ask about my past. They notice the absence of my parents at holiday gatherings or weekend cookouts. They ask polite, cautious questions about my siblings. I give them the brief, factual version of the truth. When they ask if I miss my family, I answer honestly. I tell them I miss the idea of a family. I miss the concept of a father who protects his children from the world instead of using them as a human shield. I miss the concept of a mother who provides unconditional comfort instead of calculating the social cost of her affection. I miss the fantasy of a sister who acts like a loyal friend instead of a relentless competitor. But I do not miss the reality of the people who actually shared my blood. I do not miss the constant suffocating anxiety that dictated my childhood. I do not miss the emotional manipulation. I do not miss guarding my wallet and my sanity every single time I walked through the front door of my childhood home. I learned a harsh, permanent lesson in that hospital recovery ward a year ago. I learned that true family is not defined by a shared last name. It is not defined by forced biological loyalty or the expectation of blind obedience. True family is defined by the people who show up when the walls close in around you. It is defined by a grandmother who hears a desperate phone call and immediately mobilizes a ruthless defense without asking for an apology. It is defined by a corporate lawyer who treats your stolen future like her own personal war. Evelyn and Victoria are my family. Victoria stops by my clinic on Tuesday mornings for black coffee before her court appearances. Evelyn comes to my house every Sunday evening. We sit in my dining room and eat roasted chicken. We do not pretend to be perfect. We do not hide our flaws to impress the neighbors. We just tell the truth. The final test of my piece arrives on a random Tuesday afternoon. The mail carrier walks up my front steps and drops a small stack of envelopes into the brass box mounted next to my door. Most of the mail consists of routine utility bills and dental clinic flyers. But one envelope stands out. It is a thin white square of paper. The return address is printed in the top left corner. It lists a cheap apartment complex located on the extreme outskirts of Atlanta. The handwriting is instantly recognizable. It is Susan's precise sloping cursive script. It has been 12 months since the financial collapse. Richard is likely suffocating under the heavy restrictions of his state probation. Brittany is likely complaining endlessly about her minimum wage retail shifts. Susan is undoubtedly desperate for an escape route. The letter inside the envelope is a calculated plea. It is an attempt to reopen a heavy door I permanently locked. She likely wrote pages about forgiveness. She likely invoked the concept of grace and the passage of time. She wants to test the perimeter. She wants to see if the quiet, obedient daughter still exists somewhere inside my chest. I hold the envelope in my hand. I feel the thin, cheap paper between my fingers. A year ago, my heart would have raced. A year ago, I would have opened the seal out of a misplaced sense of biological duty. I would have read every single manipulative word and let the toxic guilt poison my entire evening. Today, my heart rate remains perfectly steady. I do not open the envelope. I do not even carry it inside the house. I walk over to the small cast-iron fire pit sitting on the corner of my brick patio. I keep a box of wooden matches on the side table for evening fires. I pull a single match from the cardboard box. I strike the red tip against the rough sandpaper strip. The flame flares bright orange in the fading twilight. I touch the fire to the corner of the white envelope. The dry paper catches instantly. The flame crawls across the surface, consuming the neat cursive letters of my mother's name. It eats through the Atlanta return address. The cheap paper turns into a curling black husk. I do not feel a single trace of regret or sorrow. I drop the burning letter into the deep iron bowl. I stand on the patio and watch the fire reduce the words to black ash. A warm coastal breeze sweeps across the yard, picking up the fragile cinders and scattering them into the dark garden where they disappear entirely. The conflict is gone. It has no power here. I turn my back on the fire pit and walk back to the wicker chair on the porch. I did not win a war. You do not win when the people who hurt you are the very ones who were supposed to love you. You do not receive a shiny trophy for surviving a betrayal that never should have happened in the first place. You only get to walk away with your life. But I survived the fire they started. I kept my grandfather's legacy intact. I turned his careful financial planning into a reality he would have been proud to witness. I sit down in the chair. I pick up my glass of sweet tea and take a slow drink. I set the glass back down on the wide armrest. I press my bare feet against the solid wooden floorboards of the sweeping porch. The wood is cool and firm beneath my skin. The foundation does not shake. I breathe in the humid savanna air, feeling a deep, permanent sense of quiet. I am standing firmly on ground that belongs entirely to me, and no one will ever take it away. I watch the last ember fade in the iron fire pit. The coastal breeze sweeps the ash into the dark garden, leaving nothing behind but the quiet hum of the savannah night. I survived the betrayal that was meant to ruin me. I did not just survive it, I dismantled it entirely. I built a life that is completely my own, standing on a firm foundation they can never touch. But surviving a profound betrayal from the exact people who were supposed to protect you permanently changes how you view the world. Looking back at the cold hospital room, the forged banking documents, and the flashing yellow lights of the tow truck, I realize that this entire ordeal was a brutal but necessary education. I paid a high emotional price for my current peace, but the lessons I learned are invaluable. Lesson 1. Family is an action, not a biological default. Blood simply dictates who you are related to, but consistent loyalty dictates who your family actually is. Evelyn and Victoria chose to fight for my future when my own parents chose to sell it. You owe nothing to people who use the word family as a weapon to demand your silence. Lesson 2. Financial boundaries are the ultimate emotional boundaries. My grandfather knew this when he locked my inheritance in a protective trust. Money is a tool, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a dangerous mechanism for control. Securing your finances is the first step in securing your independence. Never apologize for demanding exactly what is legally and rightfully yours. Lesson 3. Silence protects the abuser, while documentation protects the victim. My father relied heavily on the assumption that I would quietly accept the theft to keep the peace. The moment I stopped crying and started taking screenshots, recording conversations, and demanding bank records, his entire empire collapsed. Always keep the receipts. Lesson 4. Arrogance is a louder confession than spoken words. My parents were completely blinded by their own vanity. They believed they were untouchable because they maintained a flawless social status. They threw a lavish country club party with stolen funds, entirely unaware that their arrogance was exactly what handed me the ultimate victory. Let them talk, let them boast. Their ego will eventually build their own trap. Lesson 5. True peace does not require their apology. I never received a sincere apology from Richard or Susan or Brittany. They only regretted getting caught and losing their wealth. I learned that I do not need their remorse to move forward. Forgiveness is a personal choice, but closure is something you give yourself by walking away and refusing to look back. My name is Diana, and my story ends right here on this quiet porch. I lost the fragile illusion of a perfect family, but I gained a reality where I am completely in control. The money was recovered, the criminals were punished, and the trauma was left in the past. If you are sitting in the dark right now feeling trapped by the people who are supposed to love you, I want you to know that you have the power to write your own ending. You just have to be brave enough to strike the match and walk away. Thank you for listening to my journey today. If my story resonated with you, please drop a comment below and share your own experiences. I read every single one. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to Senior Echo Stories for more narratives about survival justice and reclaiming your life. I will see you in the next video.